It's a cold, gray, and overcast evening here at James Griffin Stadium in St. Paul, where tonight the St. Paul Central Minutemen take on the Cretin Derham Hall Raiders. It's all coming to you live next on SPNN. Hello again, everyone. Todd Johnson along with Coley McDonough. It's impossible for us to begin tonight's broadcast without first acknowledging the terrible events, the terrorist attacks on our country in the past few days. And Coley, from a sports world perspective, the NFL games are canceled, the college football games are canceled. Your thoughts on playing tonight's game?
Well, Todd, I think there's a couple different schools of thought there. Number one, obviously, you have to recognize the fact that what happened to our country has never happened before. And the significance of it is, it's tremendous. But from a kid's standpoint, they need normalcy. They need to come back and get back into the flow of things and get themselves under control and resume what they normally do. And so ultimately, I think this is a good thing that the kids are back on the field and playing football.
Football is a game of concentration. How difficult will it be for the players and coaches tonight?
Well, I think that there's a difference between the players and the coaches. I think the players will have, maybe a little bit easier time focusing on what's going on. I think that the coaches may have a little broader perspective of things, and it may be a little bit more difficult for them to focus. But again, I think once the ball's kicked off, Todd, I think they're going to be playing.
We'll have more on tonight's game. After this, you're watching high school football on SPNN. And we are live from Griffin Stadium in St. Paul. Todd Johnson along with Coley McDonough. The opening kickoff just a moment ago was returned by Adrian Perryman, and the Central Minutemen will start on their 31-yard line against Coley, one of the best teams in the state of Minnesota.
Absolutely. Cretin Derham Hall Raiders, ranked number 2 in the state of Minnesota, 2-0 right now. They're going to be tough to beat. It'll be interesting to see how Central attacks.
Well, Central is going to start out in their I formation, and a little movement there on the left side of the line. And, Coley, we talked in the open. This is not an easy game for either of these two schools to play. I know at least Cretin Derham Hall missed one day of practice. It's certainly understandable if their mind is not on tonight's game.
Well, absolutely, Todd. I think the thing is it's going to be hard for everybody. It's hard for the United States of America to deal with this. I know I talked to Scotty Howell before the game, and he said they did get their kids together the day of the disaster. And he said it obviously wasn't a very good day of practice, but he said he wanted to bring his kids together, and I think that was important.
We're just underway in the first quarter, 1st and 15 from the 26-yard line. The give goes to James Paris Edwards, and he is just buried in the backfield.
Mark Fishbach on the stop. He broke right through there. I think he just shot a gap, and the Central guy didn't reach down and get him.
It's a scary thought, Coley, as good as Cretin Derham Hall has been over the years, and of course being the runner-up last year. Rich Kallick said this front four of Cretin Derham Hall, Stevenson, Tinte Harris, Freeman, and this may be their best front four they've ever had.
Well, let me tell you something first about Mr. Kallick. He's going to tell you that every year. and every year he's probably right. They get better and better, and we're going to see. It's still early yet.
2nd and 19. Simons comes to the near side. He's the big play tight end for Central. And the give goes to Edwards. And who else just buries him behind the line? Ball is loose. And let's see. They're going to rule it down.
Yeah, he was down, Todd.
That was big Marcus Freeman on the tackle for Cretin Derham Hall, 6'4", 231-pound senior, and he, of course, has the attention of a lot of Division I coaches, and Coley, he is also one of the premier players in the state.
I tell you what, I talked to Coach Kallick before the game, and what he said about Freeman was that he's grown up, was the words he used, and I said, well, what do you mean by he's grown up? Basically what he meant is he's playing on both sides of the ball, he's got wide-out speed, and physically he can play with anybody.
Well, you'll see him as a tight end on offense, and he's got great speed. 3rd and 19 for the Central Minutemen. Again, wide receivers either side. Play action pass. Garafola screen off to the left side. Edwards got a block and looked like he may have stepped out of bounds, but didn't get much further. And as he is wrapped up at about the 20-yard line, that'll bring up a punting situation for the Central Minutemen. So early on, no surprise, Cretin just a smothering defense, and you'll get a look at that here in the replay.
Yeah, I tell you what, you watch the pursuit to the ball. He swings it out. It was a tough ball to get away, and he almost gets away from one way, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 there's 4 Cretin Derham Hall defenders right on top of the screen pass.
Chuck Miesbauer was the first in on that tackle, and it'll bring up a punting situation for the Central Minutemen, and Cortez Berry standing at about his 6-yard line. And pretty good kick at about the 45-yard line, and Central going to back away. Rather, Cretin will, and the Minutemen down it at about the 42-yard line, and that's where the high-powered Cretin Derham Hall offense will come onto the field, led by their outstanding young quarterback, Phil Marino. Shouldn't say young, he's a senior, 6'1", 184-pounder. He had a pretty good quarterback that he was playing behind last year.
Yeah, he did, and I think the important thing for Marino to do, and I'm sure that the coaching staff at Cretin Derham Hall has done that, is they got to forget about Joe Mauer. Joe Mauer doesn't play quarterback for him anymore, and according to Coach Calic, Marino's been doing a very nice job. Matter of fact, he said he throws a couple balls better than Joe did.
Well, they're going to start it with 3 wide receivers for Marino, and he's going to go to the air right off the bat. And a little pass to Marcus Freeman. Freeman trying to shut a tackle. Raheem Shabazz hanging on and does a pretty good job, but not before a 4-yard pickup for Marcus Freeman.
I tell you what, that was a great tackle by Shabazz. He doesn't make that tackle. Freeman, who knows, he could score. He's so big and so strong and so fast. Shabazz looked like he was just hanging on for his life, being pulled by a truck.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of different looks from Cretin. You'll see Kim Sorin, their outstanding running back. They'll split him wide as a wide receiver. And the reason they do that is he's so difficult to cover, and they want to get him in one-on-one situations.
Well, and that's what you have to do with your best ball players, is you got to get them in situations where they can be successful.
And he lines up now as a slot to the right side, 2nd and 5 from the 37-yard line. And the give goes to the fullback, and he's got the first down, plowing his way through the secondary. Look like Nick
Biagini.
Nick Biagini will try.
Is that Biagini?
Yeah, we'll go with that. 6'2", 225-pound junior, and he plowed his way right through for a first down.
Well, you know me and fullbacks, Todd. I love that straight dive, and here we come right at you. I think it's critical for Central to make a stand here. I don't think they want to get behind and get in a hole early.
8 minutes to go here, first quarter, just underway from James Griffin Stadium in St. Paul. Todd Johnson along with Coley McDonough. 1st and 10 for the Cretin Raiders at the 26-yard line. And Marino going to give it off to Sorin. Sorin dances in the secondary. Down to the right, breaks another tackle to the 10, to the 5, and it is 6-0. Cretin Derham Hall. Boy, Kim Sorin, just some terrific inside moves, and before you know it, he bursts to the outside for the touchdown.
Todd, that's the key, too. Anytime you run inside, you teach your backs. You get inside, you get to the hole, and then you get outside. And that's exactly what Sorin did. You look at right here on the replay. He gets outside, makes one guy miss, and then it's all speed, and you can't coach speed. Kim Sorin, he can flat out go. Cretin Derham Hall, it's going to be potentially 7-0 here with 8 minutes left in the first quarter.
Tom Molnar in for the extra point. He's been perfect so far this season, 14 for 14. And Sorin the holder, and Molnar just drills it. And just like that, Cretin Derham Hall, as they've done all season long, on top early 7-0.
I think it's for Cretin Derham Hall, that has to be the mentality that they have. They want to come in and they want to knock you out early, and they want to take you out early. What's important for Central and Scotty Hall now is to get his troops together and understand, it is only 7-0. Their offense has to come out. They have to sustain a drive. They have to pick up a first down, maybe 2, and show that they can move the football. If they're fortunate enough to score, obviously that would be great, but they have to hang on to the ball and keep the ball out of the hands of that explosive Cretin Derham Hall offense.
Coley, we've heard so many times the expression, it's 14-0 when we get off the bus. What are people talking about?
Well, it's funny because having been a Cretin Raider back in the days and having been on that coaching staff and then having coached against it, sometimes that is the feeling. Sometimes I think the inner city kids are thinking, they're big and they're strong and they're fast, and maybe in their mind they're not quite confident that they can play with them. I think that's something that as a coach you have to instill in your kids, that these guys put their cleats on 1 foot at a time just like everybody else does, and they work hard, and you just got to work hard and stay at it.
Molnar will kick off, and he's had 4 touchbacks, and this one will be fielded by Adrian Perryman, who had a career game last week. He gets it at the 20 to the 25, breaks a hole up the middle, and Perryman squirts forward to about the 33-yard line.
Great return by Perryman. I tell you, if he would have squirted to the left there rather than the right, I think there was a hole and he might have busted it. And as you said, Todd, last week against Highland Park, I mean, this kid, he did it all.
Well,
he had a reception for a touchdown, an interception for a touchdown, and then he had the game winner with a kickoff return with 3 minutes to go in the game after Highland had taken the lead.
Might have been the single best performance we've ever seen here on SPNN, and what a great game that was. Of course, Central coming back to win 28-26, but they're down 7-0 here early to the Cretin Derham Hall Raiders. They're going to try to get something going here at their 31-yard line. Again, some movement up front for St. Paul Central.
A little bit of jitters, I think. A little nervous. You're facing the number 2 team in the state. You're just coming off a great win. It's hard.
We should tell you that the referee tonight is Jim Kowaleski, the head linesman Rick Kruger, the umpire Dean Hultgren, line judge Mike Bronson, and the back judge Scott Hill. And I would imagine, Coley, we've talked about our feelings about the players. This also probably is just as difficult for the officials to get into tonight's game.
I think it's difficult, like I said, Todd, for everybody. This is a tragedy that occurred, and I think it'll bring people together, though.
First down and 15 from the 26-yard line. 2 wide receivers left. Quick give up the middle. And not much running room there.
Hey, 71.
Pretty good tackle.
Hey.
That time. You probably pick up. We got the
Don't use the
officials mic today, so you might pick up some interesting conversations.
Do we have the ump cam, Tom?
We don't have the ump cam. We got the ump mic.
The ump mic,
so,
okay.
That may be just good. Tackle for that play was Mark Wyant, 6'1", 197-pound senior. Matt Wyant, pardon me.
And his brother Danny played several years ago. I don't know if he was on the state championship team or not.
Luke Garafola leading the charge, and a little draw play, and that didn't fool anybody. He's just dragged down.
It certainly didn't fool Mark Fishbach. He was sitting on that, and had he gotten by him, there was some running room there.
Number 64 just wrapped him up.
Yeah, he sure did. Again, now, Todd, Central's putting himself in a tough spot. You get to 3rd and long yardage, and Cretin gets to pin their ears back and come after you. It'll be interesting to see how they respond. And I think, the draw play and the misdirection stuff is kind of where you have to go. But they're going to have to find something that makes them successful, something that they do well, that they can execute against the Cretin Derham Hall defense.
One thing I think they'd like to do is get the ball in the hands of Adrian Perryman. And they do that just now as they throw it off to the left. Perryman tries to turn the corner, breaks a couple of tackles. But I tell you, Perryman really is head and shoulders the best player on the field for Central.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, he demonstrated that last week. And, Scotty Howell said he's interested to see how Perryman responds to after having a game like that, and you get the media press. And, he didn't win the Prep Athlete of the Week, the kid from Hill Murray who threw for 1,000 yards in a game or whatever it was. But in any other week, Perryman would have won it. But I think Scotty's finding out early that, Perryman's the guy to go to.
And it's a good test. Why not against maybe the number 1 team in the state of Minnesota? It'll bring up a 4th down. Cortez Berry standing at his 20-yard line. And again, gets a high spiraling kick. Kim Sarin fields it at the 40. Sarin looking for a block. Sarin keeps his legs moving forward and gets across midfield to the 44-yard line.
I think the field position, Cretin Derham Hall's in good shape. I mean, if they only got to go 40 yards to score a touchdown, they're in pretty good shape. It'll be interesting to see if they go right after with the air. You see Sarin there with a couple of Central defenders. He's a strong kid. For as small as he is, Kim Sarin is a very strong football player. And, sometimes people think that the little guys, all they can do is run. But Sarin's been playing in this offense. This is his 3rd year now. He played some as a sophomore. Was a big part of their run to the state championship last year. He's a heck of a football player.
And a high-powered offense as Phil Marino drops back to pass. Slips a bit, going for it all down the sidelines, and this one's going to be overshot. Pass intended that time for number 32.
Ricky Schreier.
Ricky Schreier, thank you. And Marino showed he had a pretty good arm there.
Yeah, he did. That was a beautiful ball. And Schreier had him beat, but the ball was just a little bit overthrown.
As you said, Phil Marino, they really think he throws a couple of passes as good or better than Joe Mauer. He throws outstanding fade pattern, throws some good comeback balls. He throws a good out pattern, which is very difficult at this level.
It certainly is. 2nd
and 10. And the give goes to Soren, and Soren plunges his way forward. He's got a big offensive line in front of him. 6'5", 240 is number 71, Ryan Harris, and Mark Fischbach, 64, 6'2", 253-pound senior. Marcus Freeman, of course, the tight end, 6'4", 231. Scott Stevenson, number 50, 6'4", 250-pound senior. That's a lot of bulk up front.
Well, and I tell you, Todd, that's the thing. When I was coaching in '99, we had a big offensive line. If you got a big offensive line, you can do just about anything. You're going to be able to get good pass protection. You're going to be able to get off the ball and get into people and move bodies, create holes for your running backs. It really helps a lot to have those big guys up front.
And they have more than just 4 or 5 guys. They're going to rotate 10 guys on the offensive line. That really helps. Marino swings it out to Soren at the 40. Soren cannot get by Adrian Perryman. A big tackle, strong play by number 22, Adrian Perryman.
Great tackle by Perryman. I tell you, tackle Kim Soren in the open field. Those were 2 great football players out there. Perryman actually won that battle and are going to force, you see the swing pass out there, and Soren wasn't able to get his shoulder square. You'll hear me talk about that through the course of the game. When you're running sweeps and swings, the back wants to try to get his shoulder square to the line of scrimmage so he can choose which way he wants to run. Soren was unable to do that. Perryman came up and made a nice stop.
Folks, this is a rare event you're about to see. Cretin Derham Hall is going to punt the football. They really have not punted the football much at all this year.
Well, I wonder if they got 11 guys out there.
Seth Thompson is standing back, maybe the loneliest guy on the team, at his 45-yard line, and he gets off a spiraling kick, and it is fielded at the goal line, and not much running room that time for the Central Minutemen. Chris Weewu looked like down there, number 80. And Coley, I heard you calling for a let it drop.
Yeah, that's a mental mistake, and I think Scotty's going to be a little upset with that. What you tell your guys is when they're punting deep into your end, you put yourself on the 10-yard line, and if it goes over your head, you let it go. Now Central's backed up. They got to go 96 yards or wherever to get a touchdown, and they're in a position where at 3 and out, Cretin Derham Hall has great field position again. Would have been smart for him to let that ball go. You saw Scotty tap him on the head. I think he just kind of reminded him of that, and I don't think that young man will probably make that same error again.
And they had a little momentum going there, stopping Cretin. That was a victory in itself. From the 6-yard line, Eric Simons now lines up as a tight end to the left side and rolling to the left. Actually, a fake up the middle. He faked us and plowing his way forward. We'll see what it is at the bottom of that pile. Look for number 20, Tremaine Lindsay. And he's perfectly capable of moving a pile.
Yeah, he did a nice job. See on the replay.
There's Lindsay.
I tell you what's impressive is you look at the Cretin Derham Hall linebacker, Seth Thompson, and how low he got on that play. And for you young guys out there watching, that's how you tackle. You got to get low. The fullback still did a good job in bouncing off him, and he picked up 5 yards, or 4 or 5 yards, give him second in mid-range for a first down.
3:30 to go here, early first quarter. Well, it's not that early. 3:30 to go. 7-0. Raiders on top. 2nd down and 6 for the St. Paul Central Minutemen. Garafola giving the ball to Raheem Shabazz, and he gets a good haul, and he's near the first down. He may have it.
He's got the first down. I think what I'm seeing Central doing is they're going after him. They're running right at the Cretin Derham Hall defense, and Scotty said that's what he wanted to do. A lot of teams will try to run away from him. He wants to run right at him, and I think those quick hitters is the way to go. I think the plays that take a little bit longer to develop are a little tougher to run. You hit them with a quick hitter, and then it's all quickness.
And you wonder with each successful play if Central gains a little bit of confidence.
You bet they do, Todd. You bet they do.
First down for the Central Minutemen from the 16-yard line. And again, they give the ball to the tailback, Paris Edwards. The ball squirts loose, and they're going to rule it down.
Down by contact, Todd. That's a break for Central right there. Because I tell you what, it would have been 14-0. There was three Raiders over there. You watch on the replay. The handoff looks clean. He's got it, but you know what? He's got it in the wrong hand. But yeah, he was definitely down. No question.
Ball was stripped that time by number 5, Brandon Archer.
He was on top of the Raider. I don't know that he came in contact with the ground.
Well, it looked like Brandon Archer was the Raider who stripped the ball.
You look at it again here. Oh, that's a little late on there, but
well, it'll bring up a 2nd down and 11. One wide receiver to the right, and again, they give it up the middle. And Lindsey is pushed backwards by a host of white-shirted Cretin Durham Hall Raiders. It'll bring up 3rd down.
And I think that now they're starting to go to that lead, and that lead takes a little more time to develop. Here's the last play, and you see if the running back actually hits the ground.
Was his knee down?
Yeah, I think his knee was down. That's a tough call, but good call by the official.
Yeah, great job by our camera crew catching that right through the mass of players. 3rd down and 11, a minute 38 to go here in the first quarter. You're watching live coverage of St. Paul City Conference football. Todd Johnson along with Coley McDonough. And the Central Minutemen desperately needed a first down. Here's a quick pass, and it is in and out of the hands of number 5, Darren Hubbard. And he took a shot right after that.
He sure did. You know, that's the old adage that we try to tell our wide receivers. You're going to get hit anyway. You might as well catch the ball. Here's the replay on that. A little wobbly ball. And, man, he got smacked by Archer. That was a big-time hit right there.
Brandon Archer, 6'2", 223-pound senior, co-captain, and a number of Big Ten schools. He's one of those Division I recruits here on Cretin Durham Hall, and they think he may even be better than his brother Phil, who is with the University of Minnesota program.
Well, yeah, and then there's always that story about how many guys they got in the NFL.
Well, we'll get to that as Cortez Berry standing at his goal line, and Berry gets, again, a pretty good kick at the 40-yard line, looking for a block down the right side, and he's finally wrestled at the 35-yard line.
Again, Todd, you're looking at field position. Cretin Durham Hall on the central 36-yard line. They got it. Central needs a big play. They got to get the ball out of their end of the field.
Ricky Schreier on that punt return, and watch Kim Soren. He'll throw a block right here.
Well, and if you can catch it here, you see the wall Cretin Durham Hall sets up. He makes a miss here, and then I think this could have been a better read because that guy had him sealed. If he would have stepped inside, I think he might have been there.
Well, back to live action. 1st and 10 from the 36-yard line. Soren in the backfield, and they give the ball to Kim Soren. Soren, great acceleration into the secondary, and you can say good night. Kim Soren in for the touchdown. Does he have rocket-propelled cleats or what?
I don't know, but I tell you what, Perryman caught him. I think Soren might have let up a little bit. He knew he was in, but boy, I tell you, Kim Soren. And again, he's doing it between the tackles. This is a little trap play. They're counter tray. They pull the guard and the tackle on the backside. They kick out, lead up with the tackle. Soren gets up the middle, and he does the rest with his feet. And man, and watch Perryman come from out of nowhere to bring him down. And, you know, that says a lot about Perryman and a lot about the Central defense in terms of not giving up.
And Molnar's kick is good, and the Raiders on top 14-0. And Kim Soren, of course, started the scoring tonight with a 26-yard touchdown run, and he does a repeat performance with a 36-yard touchdown run. Coming in at today's game, Coley, he's the leading scorer in the St. Paul City Conference. No real surprise, 6 touchdowns, make it 8 on the season for Kim Soren.
Yeah, and I got a feeling he's probably going to score more than 8 more. Certainly, well, maybe not tonight, but certainly throughout the course of the season. And now you go back to Cretin Durham Hall getting off the bus up 14-0. Minute left in the first quarter, and they're up 14-0.
You know, I agree, Coley. I like the play calling so far of Central. They've gone with the quick hits. They tried that slant over the middle. I think they're playing it smart. The problem is there's just so much talent on the other side of the ball.
Well, and you know what? There's very little you can do about that in particular. You know, you can only coach the guys that you have.
Right.
And, you know, now the Central's job is to do the best they can to stay in the game. And, you know, 14-0 isn't the end of the world, but, you know, it's how do the kids respond to that? How is the Central offense going to respond now? Maybe Perryman can make a big play on a return. He was pretty close last time.
Perryman is standing at his 15-yard line. Tom Molnar, as I mentioned, has 5 touchbacks so far in the young season, and let's see if he gets it anywhere near Perryman. And he gets under it a little bit. Perryman steps up right at the 20-yard line. Perryman accelerates around the right side. Perryman sheds a couple of tackles up to the 35, 36-yard line. So he really is a burst of energy for the Central Minutemen.
On that return, Todd, the Central set up a wall on their bench. Perryman made a bust to it, and we have one guy that broke it. You know, and that's kind of what separates Cretin Derham Hall from a lot of other teams is when you get one guy on an island, that guy from Cretin Derham Hall, generally speaking, is going to make that tackle where, you know, maybe another team might miss that tackle, and all of a sudden Perryman's still running. You look right there. Mark Nolan with the stop on that kickoff return.
Chris Weewu lines up wide to the left side. It's hard to say. Weewu lines up wide to the left. Simon's also the tight end on the left side. And looking over the middle, Garofola's got his man open, and he's got Perryman in the secondary. Perryman, he's got one man to beat. Perryman's going to go in for the touchdown. The first point scored against Cretin Derham Hall in 3 games, and St. Paul Central on the scoreboard. You called it, Coley. A big play from Adrian Perryman.
That's where you got to go, and I guess Scotty Hall's got his answer. Perryman's his guy. You know, Cretin Derham Hall is going to have to react to that. They're going to have to put somebody on him and, you know, pay that young man some respect, because I tell you what, that guy's for real.
A 65-yard touchdown pass, Luke Garofola to Adrian Perryman. There you see the graphic, 112-0 coming into tonight's game, and there you saw the first touchdown ever of the night of the 2001 season scored, and they're going to go for 2. Perryman lines up wide to the right side. He's got single coverage. Rolling to the left is Garofola. He's going to reach for it himself, and let's see, did he get in? He was very close, and they're going to say he was short.
I thought he got in, Todd.
Very, very close.
Holy cow.
Checking on the replay.
I don't know. It's just the ball's got to cross the plane, right? See if we can get a replay on that one. Garofola, little play action. He fakes the lead to the right and rolls to the left. It looked to me like it was a designed run.
Well, let's take a look at the touchdown first, Coley, because what an exciting play that was. Play action pass, and again, Garofola hesitated, and there he goes off to the races.
Well, I think the safety slipped on that, but the play action is what really makes that play, because it holds the linebackers. You see Archer coming in, trying to make the tackle at the very end, but that play action was able to hold Archer just for a second, just long enough to get Perryman enough distance to score.
I tell you, I think the Cretin Derham Hall fans here right below us are stunned. I mean, they're not used to being in the game.
Well, and I tell you, it's being in the game in the St. Paul City Conference against Cretin Derham Hall takes big plays, and Perryman and Central just made a big play.
Well, last week, Adrian Perryman, a 65-yard touchdown reception, a 35-yard interception for a touchdown, and a 75-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. And then he answers tonight with a 65-yard touchdown reception. So he's all about big plays.
Yes, indeed, and you got to have one of those guys. The only problem is Central may only have one of those guys, and Cretin Derham Hall has several.
Barthez Bernard on the kickoff, and this is fielded by Sorin, who's just as dangerous. Sorin to the 25 to the 30, through the middle. Kim Sorin, look out! Kim Sorin, can he answer to the 35 to the 40? One man to beat. Sorin is finally knocked out of bounds at the 15-yard line by who else? Adrian Perryman.
That's what I was going to say, by who else? And I tell you what, Sorin did exactly what you're supposed to do. You attack a kickoff return at the middle. As soon as you break that first front line, then you bust it outside. Sorin did exactly that. Brought Cretin Derham Hall, and see, you watch on the return. He comes up the middle. He's got a host of blockers. He hits the gas here, and now he looks and he breaks it outside. Now it's just a foot race. Perryman does an excellent job. You watch Perryman at the top of your screen, takes a great angle of pursuit, and he's under control. He's not sprinting. He's under control, so Sorin can't cut back on him. Sorin then just tries to gas it, but Perryman's got equal speed to Sorin, or at least very close to that.
Let's see if Central strikes quickly. Marino drops back to pass. Blitz is on, under pressure. He escapes the pressure, looking for Freeman, and incomplete.
Yeah, and he had 2 guys on him. I think Marino just threw that ball away. I think he was looking for the pass out in the flat, and the Central linebacker had that covered, and he had Freeman going on a post. Freeman was covered by both a linebacker and a safety, which is probably pretty smart. I'd put 2 guys on Freeman.
Number 52, Mike Janish for the Minutemen, applying the pressure up the middle. 5'9", 175-pound senior. He's the starting strong side linebacker. And again, Central competing very well here.
Well, and unfortunately, the kickoff return was exactly what they didn't need. Central's in man coverage, it looks like, Todd.
2nd and 10, Serin in motion to the near side, and they give the ball to, well, up the middle. A great fake. He had me on that one. I was looking at Serin, then I looked at Marino, and before you know it, the ball is plowed up the middle.
Biagini, the big fullback. Is that how we're going to say it, Todd?
Let's go with it.
Okay, I hope we're saying it right. If we're not, we apologize.
Nick Biagini, 6'2", 225-pound junior, and that is the end of the first quarter. Our score from James Griffin Stadium in St. Paul under a light mist. The Cretin Derham Hall Raiders 14 and the St. Paul Minutemen 6. You're watching live coverage here on SPNN. Todd Johnson along with Coley McDonough.
Well, you remember, Todd, the last time Cretin Derham Hall was in a St. Paul City Conference football game, don't you?
Well, the team that came closest to beating them was 2 years ago, a young, feisty Arlington High School team coached by, what was his name? Coley McDonough, right here in the booth. Coley, seriously, in that game, you guys came within an inch of knocking off the Raiders. What does it take, really, mentally, physically, to be in a game with these guys?
Well, and you said it. It takes mentally and it takes physically. And I think, you know, the adage of 14-0 when you get off the bus, that's what you got to sell your kids. You got to sell your kids that they're not down 14-0. And you know what? You have to have a special group of kids. And I was fortunate to have a special group of seniors that had been with me for 4 years and had worked hard and done all the things that you need to do in order to be successful. And, you know, that was a heck of a football game.
You know, as a former player, as you were at Cretin, I think Rich Kallick was very glad to get out of that game.
Yeah.
It would have been, he would have gotten plenty of phone calls if he lost to a former player. 3rd and 1 for the Raiders at the 11-yard line. And Marino rolling to his right. Little pass is off the hands of Marcus Freeman. You don't see that too often, but the rain is coming down a bit here.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a wet ball syndrome there. And he put a nice touch on the ball. I think looked to me like Freeman should have had it, but little wet ball. You see him roll out here. Just puts a little touch on the ball. That was a little long. I think Coach Scanlon will probably give him a hard time about that one in film.
It'll bring up a 4th down and 1, and Cretin going to go for this one.
Huge play for Central here. Huge play for their defense.
Serin gets the handoff and eludes a tackle in the backfield. He's got the 1st down. Well, he was almost caught in the backfield.
Boy, and he's not done.
The pile is still moving forward.
That's what I said about Serin being a strong kid. And you know what? The other part of, you know, the smaller guys, they're tough to get a hold of. But a good search by the defensive line of Central. They had a chance to stop Serin, but I think he got that one on his own.
And you can see the confidence they have in him. 4th and 1, you know the ball's going up the middle. Rather than giving it to Biagini or one of the other bigger fullbacks, they give it to Serin.
Well, they definitely have confidence in him. And, you know, he's a threat to score every time he touches it. So he's got to have, you know, 15, 20 touches a game.
1st down from the 6. And this is Serin looking for the corner. And he is in for the touchdown.
Perriman just couldn't beat him to the corner on that one. Serin scores his 3rd of the night. And that's unfortunate for Central. I think that kickoff return really hurt them. They were in the field position situation again. And, you know, but they got to stay after it. You see Serin here, a little coaching point, and I think Coach Scanlon will get after him. He had the ball in the wrong hand. You want to have that ball in the outside hand. But I guess, you know, if he gets in and scores, who cares?
Well, Kim Serin, 4 touchdowns last week in their blowout win over Arlington, 63-0. And
be careful how you say that.
He's got 3 touchdowns tonight. Well, it was 63-0.
Yeah, I guess that would constitute a blowout, wouldn't it?
And of course, in week 1, the Raiders took care of Highland Park 49-0. You saw that graphic early on, up until the touchdown by Perryman. They'd outscored their opponents 112-0. So another touchdown by Serin makes the score 21-6. Cretin Derham Hall, and St. Paul Central again going to need a big play to stay in this game.
Well, and that's exactly what they need. And, you know, let's not kid ourselves, Todd. We know where that big play has to come from. At the same time, you know what? Central needs a couple other guys to step up. They got to have somebody else, make the big play because, Cretin is a very well-coached football team, and they're going to keep their eye on Perryman. They're going to do what they have to do to try to stop him. As obviously a former coach, my deal was you make somebody else beat you. You try to take their best guy out of the game, and you make somebody else beat you. I know the Arlington-Como game last night was, nip and tuck through 3 quarters, and I know that Kevin Wolf, the new coach at Arlington, was, his philosophy was, I'm going to stop Vandeweghe, and he did that. Unfortunately, he tried to make somebody else beat him, and Gabe Bates was able to do that and had a heck of a game.
Molnar kicking off, and Perryman stepping under this one at the 20-yard line, and Perryman gets out to about the 30-yard line. Seth Thompson on the tackle for the Cretin-Derham Hall Raiders.
Yeah, Barthez Bernard was there, and he had his back to the guy who made the tackle. I don't quite understand how that really worked out. I don't know if they were trying to run a wall to the opposition's bench or...
Now that you're up here in the booth, you can just speculate about anything you want.
Oh, it's great, yeah. Although I got to tell you, I took a little heat from our game last week, particularly from the Arlington coach. The only mention I made was of the discrepancy in penalties that they had in their first game, so I'll have to do a little better job for Mr. Wolf.
Well, we'll work on that. 2nd and 10 for the Central Minutemen. Give goes to Tremaine Lindsay, a couple of yards up the middle. Again, that very, very strong front four for Cretin-Derham Hall. Scott Stevenson among them, 6'4", 250-pound senior. And Coley, we talked earlier, Cretin's going to keep about 10 guys rotating, both on the offensive line and defensive line. They want to build some depth because they are looking ahead to the playoffs, and they know it's very important to have depth when you get further on into the playoffs in the state of Minnesota.
Without question, Todd. I mean, you're going to take your bumps and bruises. There's going to be a guy that twists his knee here and there. And, yeah, I mean, depth is the key to going to the state tournament. Cretin-Derham Hall's been in the state tournament 11 straight years. I don't see any reason why they can't make it 12. I mean, their region, you break it down, they got Egan, who, they're an excellent football program. You got your Minneapolis schools. I don't know that they can compete at the level of Cretin-Derham Hall. So they're looking at a situation where, they have what could potentially be a pretty easy road to the state tournament.
And, Rich Kallick respects every team in the state, and they'll go out and scout these teams. They're already looking ahead to which schools they might play, and they're going to scout every team, of course, in the St. Paul City Conference, and they are also looking ahead to the Egans of the world.
Absolutely. Todd, one of the fundamental things to me in preparing your kids to play is knowing what your opposition does. And quite honestly, that's where I learned it. I learned how to prepare for teams by working with Coach Kallick. I mean, he knows what teams are going to do, and he puts his defense in a position. I mean, Rich's defense has always been awesome. They're averaging 54 points a game against Central in the past 5 years. I mean, they're averaging 54 points a game against everybody just about.
2nd and 8. So far they have 21 on the board. 10:44 to go here in the second quarter. 2nd down and 8 for the Minutemen. Cretin showing blitz. And they back off. Garafola has some time, looking down the side, and he's got his man at midfield. Caught that time by Armando Davison.
Great catch by Davison. Garafola didn't get all of that ball, but Davison came back. He did exactly what a receiver's supposed to do. That ball's in the air, you go get it. Don't wait for it to come to you, and Davison did exactly that. He beat the Cretin defender. The safety over the top couldn't get over in time. Great catch right there. Nice catch. Oh, wait a minute.
That ball come out?
That ball came out.
Well, the officials are ruling it a catch.
They sure are. I don't think.
Of course, we have the advantage of the replay. We'll try to get that to you one more time, but it's a 1st down at the 47-yard line of the Raiders. And the give goes to Edwards. Edwards nowhere, tries to get around the right side, maybe got a yard. Let's go back to that last completion by Garafola. You see it for yourself. What do you think?
There's a catch, 2 feet are down. Now the ball comes loose. You know what? That's a fumble. That's a fumble. He has both. I mean, unless he doesn't have control, but it looks like he has control. All of a sudden, now it's out. That's a fumble. I think it was a catch and a fumble, and I don't know who came up with it or if the official didn't see it. But, Coach Kallick didn't throw his little red flag out there to do the instant replay. They don't have that in this league.
Hats off to our crew down on the field in the truck. Great replay there. And we brought it to you. 2nd down and 12. And again, Cretin showing blitz, and they back off. And play action pass, Garafola over the middle, and a lot of white jerseys, and it is incomplete. Almost picked off that time by number 32, Ricky Schreier. But
I tell you what, it looked like pass interference to me. Looked like
he was coming over the back a little bit.
It looked like he was coming over the back to me, Seth Thompson. I don't know if there wasn't contact made. It was tough to see from my vantage point, but. You know, and Central could use a call or two, you know? I mean, those are the types of things. I mean, you talk about in our 99 game, the drive that Cretin, when they scored last, they had 2 face mask calls against us that were 15. See, now they're either 5 or 15. And those penalties really can add up.
And how? 3rd down and 12. Garafola under big pressure, but he gets the pass off, and it's caught, but it's going to be a loss of about 4 yards. Barthez Bernard comes into the game for the first time, and he's just buried. And the Raiders force a 4th down and a punting situation for St. Paul Central.
Well, Bernard is their big back, and Scotty said he kind of dinged himself during the course of the week, and they're going to use him sparingly. But on that particular screenplay, unfortunately, that was poor execution by the offensive line. They did a nice job Garafola did a nice job of getting the ball off, but there's 3 Central guys there, and you know what? You got to block that guy. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it. 3 Central guys, 1 Cretin guy, you got to get that guy.
Matt Wyant made the tackle for the Raiders, and Barry, end-over-end kick, fielded by Kim Soren at the 30. Soren looking for a block. Soren, great speed, runs into his own man. Soren is finally dragged down, and I'll tell you what, Coley, if he didn't run into his own player, he might have been gone.
Unfortunately, Joe Guzik made the tackle on that one, and the unfortunate part of that is he's a Cretin Derham Hall Raider. Yeah, they set the wall up beautifully. Soren tried to bounce it out, and Guzik just happened to get in the way. Here you see it again. They set the wall up beautifully. There's a nice block right there.
Boom.
And then Soren's going to bounce it out right here. And
there it is.
That's too bad. But once again, Cretin Derham Hall starts in great field position in the Central Territory.
Jose Munoz made the tackle from the 44-yard line. Soren lines up in the backfield, comes in motion, and again, well, play action pass. Marino, plenty of time, throws in a wide open Freeman at the 30-yard line to the 25 to the 20. He's tough to bring down to about the 15-yard line. Boy, that was a great fake, Coley. He rolled to the right. There was no red jerseys anywhere near him.
No, I tell you what, he was wide open too, but he could have run that ball for about 30 yards. Nice block right here. Wide receiver makes a nice block. David Samper. You know, and it's the little things, Todd, that's what makes teams special. That's what makes Cretin Derham Hall as exceptional as they are, is their kids, they do the little things.
Absolutely, and we'll expand on that in a moment, but a 1st and 10 from the 19-yard line, 8:22 to go here in the first half. Cretin already on top 21-6 as a light rain continues to fall. And the give goes up the middle, and pretty good running room that time.
Was that Brandon Archer?
Number 5, Brandon Archer. We talked about him as a linebacker. He can also play a running back and showed some good power moves up the middle.
Man.
7-yard pickup that time for Brandon Archer. As we mentioned, his brother Phil on the U of N team also has a younger brother, Justin Archer, Jr., on this squad. Soren in the slot to the left. David Samper split wide to the left. Marino under pressure, and he dumps it off to Soren. Soren will not get away from the grasp of the St. Paul Central Minutemen. Number 27 on that tackle.
You know what? I don't have that.
Scotty Howell had a couple of late lineup changes. That one's not in, but there you get a look at it right there. Or was that Perryman?
Yeah, maybe it was.
Yeah, 22 Perryman. Looked for a moment like 27. I wonder we didn't have it.
They don't have a 27.
No, Adrian Perryman. I guess when in doubt, Coley, there's a big tackle. It's Perryman.
Yeah, just call Perryman.
3rd and 10. Perryman saves a possible touchdown, and again, pretty big play for St. Paul Central if they can hold them here.
Huge play. Well, Cretin's got 2 plays here. I mean, they're definitely in 4-down territory.
Marino back to pass, under pressure, looking in the corner, got a man wide open for the touchdown.
Well, Todd, I tell you what, that was classic. That was a double move. That's what they call that. That was a post corner pattern, and Perryman bit on the post, and he broke it to the corner. And
Ricky Schreier in for the touchdown.
You can watch it on the replay here. You see the double move. Perryman bites on the post.
Ricky Schreier, a 19-yard touchdown pass, and very well executed.
Yeah, you don't see the first move there. You just see
you don't see
Schreier
any red jerseys
no,
either.
You see he's wide open. Well, I mean, you know, that's kind of the deal. That's the whole concept of the double move is you get the guy to bite on the first move, and if you do it right, then you should be wide open.
And Molnar's extra point is good. And our score is Cretin Derham Hall 28, St. Paul Central 6.
Well, I tell you what, Central's in a little bit of trouble right now, Todd, and they got to get to the half here, and it'd be nice if they could put one in. You know, make it 28-14 or 28-12. A couple more on the board, and it's going to be a tough road to hoe in the second half.
Let's give St. Paul Central some credit. Sometimes, Coley, you see Cretin Derham Hall and their opponent look scared. They look intimidated. I don't see that tonight from Central.
I agree 100%, Todd. The Central kids have definitely asserted themselves very well. They've come out, and you know, like I said, when they're running those quick hitters, they've had some success. And I think Scotty took the right approach. That, you know what, we're not going to try to, you know, fool you. I remember, you know, years ago when I coached against Cretin, I figured out, well, I got to do something different. We came up with all these, you know, funky formations. You know what? We didn't get it done either. So, I mean, you got to play your style of football, do your thing. Cretin hasn't lost a St. Paul City Conference game since '95, and they got a 36-game conference winning streak, although, son of a gun, they should have been beaten 99.
There was a close game in 99.
If we'd have had a kicker, we scored 3, they scored 3.
Well, Molnar to kick off. This time he gets some good leg into it, bounces to the 10-yard line. Perryman picks it up there to the 15, and he gets out to about the 16-yard line. And again, Archer on the tackle. He's been all over the field.
See, that's the tough thing.
I'm sorry, Matt Wyan on the tackle.
When the weather's like this, you don't know exactly what to expect from the kicker, and Perryman was a little deep on that. That ball hits the ground, you're going to give that Cretin Derham Hall coverage team time to get down the field, and now Central's backed up in their own end again. You see Perryman, and he kind of tries to take a peek, and you know, he picks it up and runs, which is exactly what you have to do, but starting on the 15 makes it tough.
6:43 to go here in the first half. Luke Garafola trying to get something going for the Central Minutemen. Again, Simons comes in motion, a lineup as the tight end on the left side. And here comes a reverse to Perryman. He's got a block, Perryman, but that hole closes quickly. It looked like it was set up well, but Central, or Cretin rather, just they stayed in their positions and they just weren't fooled.
Well, again, and you're talking again about the little things. I mean, Central did set it up very well, but the backside defensive end held his position. The outside linebacker stayed home, and that's what Rich teaches them. I mean, Central now, I mean, through a quarter and almost a quarter and a half now, they're -5 yards rushing to Cretin Derham Hall's 96.
Rain continues to fall. Any advantage either way, Coley, with the poor field conditions?
I don't think so. They're both playing on the same field.
2nd and 10. Simons, haven't heard his name called on offense, and see if they look to get him the ball. And they throw off, and it is caught. Oh, incomplete. Pass intended that time to Davison.
That's unfortunate. He catches that ball, and that could have been a big play. There was a slip there, and who knows, he could have been off to the races there. You watch Garafola here, gets off a good ball. And it was just a little deep, but you see the corner there, and the safety slipped as well. He catches that ball, and it's a race to the end zone.
His head was looking up. I don't blame him. But a lot of conditions here. We got rain. Ball is slippery. And you got a Cretin Derham Hall Raider headed your way.
Yeah, and you know that they're going to stick you.
3rd and 10. 5:45 to go in the first half. Cretin on top, 28-6. Garafola blitzes on, and the ball is deflected, and it is intercepted at the 30-yard line. Garafola was hit as he threw. Ricky Schreier was Johnny on the spot, and the Raiders, again, great field position.
See, quite honestly, Todd, I got to question that. You're looking at 5.5 minutes left in the first half. You got a 3rd and 10 deep in your own end. I'm thinking maybe you run the ball, you keep that clock rolling, try to take some of the clock off the scoreboard so Cretin doesn't have so much time. Again, Cretin Derham Hall, they've started just about every drive. Matter of fact, I don't know that they've had a drive where they started in their own territory, starting at the 30-yard line of Central.
Well, Phil Marino in at quarterback from his 30-yard line, and he calls a timeout. And I believe that's the first timeout of the game called by the Raiders, and they're going to talk this one over.
I think that was a personnel issue. I think they were short a guy.
Yeah. Colleague Rich Kallick, you said he's at all of his teams he's going to say are good, but he really stressed to me in our conversation yesterday that this might be his most efficient team. And when he said that, he meant you don't see any penalties. Have they had a whistle out here today?
I don't think so.
They may not have had one all year. You don't see a shortage when they have a punting situation. You don't see them late getting out on the field. When they go through their films the next day, they grade out very well. Just as a pure coaching standpoint, it's just a very well-executed team that they have.
Well, and I tell you, a lot of that comes from, you talk about, a lot of people will talk about the fact that because Cretin Derham Hall gets the blowouts in the St. Paul City Conference, that, that hurts their starters. Well, it may hurt their starters a little bit, but I'll tell you who it does benefit. It benefits these guys who didn't play last year, and now they're playing this year.
Right.
That's where it really pays off.
Right. And there it gives big hole up the middle for the corner. He's going to go in for the touchdown. A 30-yard run.
Nick Biagini.
Nick Biagini with the 30-yard touchdown. And that offensive line just created a huge, huge hole off the right side. He may not have even been touched.
Well, and if he was, it was just a hand. That's dominance up front. And we talked early in the broadcast, Todd, about Cretin Derham Hall and their, how they want to try to take teams out of the game early. You look at the extra point here.
Molnar again is perfect. And it is now 35-6 in favor of Cretin.
Back to that point you were talking about in reference to this being an efficient team. I honestly believe, and I think if you talk to Coach Kallick, he'd say the same thing, that you know what? The kids that are going to get experience playing in game situations, as you look at Biagini scoring, you know what? He didn't get touched.
No.
Oh, yeah. There, guy.
Right there.
Maybe touched him. Nice run by Biagini. Great blocking up front by the front five of Cretin Derham Hall. And, and it would appear, as the game is going, that a lot of these guys that we see down here in front of us wearing white uniforms, they're going to get an opportunity to play. That's where he builds his program. And, you talk about numbers being an issue. You look at the field. They got 70 guys. You look across the field, Center's got 35 or 40. And, sometimes there's, people in the city, coaches, etc., will, maybe complain a little bit. Maybe Cretin shouldn't be in the St. Paul City Conference. Yes, it's a numbers game. Yes, they maybe play by maybe a little bit of different rules. That's kind of debatable. It depends who you talk to. But numbers is the key. If you got a lot of kids out, you can develop them. You can show them how the game's played. I think it's a benefit for kids to sit on the bench. I mean, when I started coaching at Arlington, my guys started as sophomores. They're not ready to play varsity football as sophomores. But, then they mature and they get better.
Point well taken. Molnar to Perryman at the 15, and he's tripped up.
Seth
Thompson.
He's made several plays on special teams, and I think he also starts on the defensive side of the ball. And see, and that's the other thing is, you're able to play. If you're only playing a guy one way, then you can play him on special teams. In '99 we were fortunate enough we were able to do that. Last year, not the case. You see Perryman here, and he takes it right up the middle of the field, which is where you got to go with it. Thompson comes from the outside. Nobody blocked him. Nobody touched him. He made the tackle.
At the same time, though, Coley, you're going to see a lot of Raiders playing on both sides of the football, and Rich Kallick would like to have his best athletes on the field, and late in the season, in the playoffs, this is the time, according to Rich, that he wants to get them game experience. You may not know it until later in the season, but this will come in handy.
Well, and it's funny because in talking to Rich before the game, he made reference to when he had McElroy and Melander as their tackles, and they got deep into the state tournament, and then he wanted to play them, in the defensive front, and they hadn't played there all year. You see the Cretin head coach, Rich Kallick, has the highest winning percentage of any coach in the history of the St. Paul City Conference. He's 71-2. 71-2. Man, that's impressive.
It's really remarkable, and
man,
you were a part of a few of those 71, weren't you?
Well, Mal Scanlon was, I think, the head coach when Rich was the defensive coordinator when I was there.
And Rich still, by the way, focuses primarily on defense. And we should mention it is kind of a co-coach situation here.
It's funny. We were talking before the game. It's kind of co-coach. There's, their staff has about 9 head coaches, or guys who could be, head coaches, and all that does is make Cretin Derham Hall better. I mean, their coaching staff is, it's exceptional top to bottom. Yeah,
Mike Scanlon running the offense, and we'll talk about some of the assistants as the game goes on. And Central going to try to get something going. Garafola, and he's lucky to hang on to the ball up to about the 20-yard line. Coley, we haven't said much about Luke Garafola, and I think Mr. Garafola has played a steady game. He hasn't folded in the pocket. He's played a tough game, and this is not an easy defense, particularly a front four, to play against.
No, I mean, you call a play, and you got a 5-step drop, and you got, Freeman coming after you, got Archer coming after you, you got all those big Cretin Derham Hall Raiders coming after you. That can be a little intimidating, and I agree. I think he's done a nice job. He sets up in the pocket well. He made one error in the last series, but he's doing a nice job.
2 yards on that last pickup by Garafola. And a little pass off left. This one is nearly picked off.
Ooh, that
oh my, in and out of the hands of number 31, Brian Lanzi.
That was, there was a little mix up there on the pattern. Looked like Garafola was looking for the quick one.
Right, Chris Rewu was looking right, and the ball went left. They'll bring up a 3rd and 8. Coley, this deep in your territory, well, at the 18-yard line, do you risk putting it up in the air again?
No, I guess, quite honestly, I keep the ball on the ground and try to get out of the first half 35-6. Although Cretin Derham Hall has demonstrated that it doesn't take them a long time to put it in the end zone.
2 wide receivers to the left. Garafola looks left, throws for Perryman. Incomplete, pass behind him.
Yeah, you can see Garafola's having a tough time gripping the ball. Last week against Highland Park, his ball was nice. You see, when you see the nose up, if you look at the replay, you see the nose of the football is up. That tells me he's unable to follow through on his throw off the front foot, and he's getting that tip up, and it's tough to be accurate when the tip of the ball is up.
You can probably tell with the camera angle there that this light rain continues to fall. And as the game goes on, maybe harder to hang on to the ball. Let's see how Cortez Berry does here, and it goes right through his legs.
Kick it out
Cortez
of the end zone.
Berry,
Kick it out of the end zone.
The ball is loose, and Cretin, are they going to fall on it? It's still within the end zone, and let's see if they rule this a touchdown, and it is. Boy, I'll tell you, Coley,
when
the ball.
It pours.
We just got through saying the ball is slippery. It goes through the legs of Cortez Berry, and you're acting as coach up here, tell him to kick it out of bounds. That way, it's only a 2-point safety. Instead, the ball comes to a Cretin Derham Hall Raider for a touchdown. Here it is, through his legs.
Yeah, I tell you,
right now.
This is where he's got to just throw it out of the back of the end zone and not try to run with it. But that's something that, that's with experience. That's something that you learn. And it's not a point that you're going to necessarily coach, because it's not something that happens often. You see Central's only got about 6 guys out there. Here come 3 more. They're all offsides.
The extra point is good by... Actually, it's no good.
But I didn't see any flags. Why wasn't there a flag on that? Coach Kallick's going bananas down there. There's no way I don't understand how there wasn't a flag on that play. 3 Central Minutemen were, without question, on the Cretin Derham Hall side of the line of scrimmage when the ball was snapped. I don't know if we can get a look at Coach Kallick. He's obviously, granted, it's 41-6, and I don't know that 42-6 makes that much of a difference, but it's the principle of the thing. I don't know what the linesman was looking at. I don't know if we can get a replay of that or not. But that was That was his first miss.
Right.
I think that's probably why coach is a little upset. He wants him to be perfect.
Right.
And if it's a penalty, he gets another shot at it, but to no avail.
Well, the end result is a touchdown for Cretin Derham Hall.
4:22 left in the first half. The Raiders in a commanding lead, 41-6.
Well, Scotty Howell, head coach of St. Paul Central, I think he has a job now to keep his players' heads up.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is keep them healthy.
This is Bernard. Bernard looking for a block down the right, and he's driven out of bounds at about the 25-yard line.
Be interesting to see how Central responds here.
Number 45, Nick Kruger, was in on that tackle, and Kruger was also the one who tackled Cortez Berry in the end zone. I'm not sure who recovered the ball. We'll just give credit to the defense for that touchdown.
Fair
and
enough.
Special teams, how about? 4:15 to go here in the first half. 41-6 is our score. Todd Johnson along with Coley McDonough. You're watching live coverage here on SPNN. Luke Garafola. Give goes to Bernard. Bernard down the right sideline. Bernard is finally knocked out of bounds, pushed out of bounds at the 40-yard line.
Chuck Miesbauer knocked him out. That was a night, that's the first time they executed that lead. And you know what? I tell you what the difference is on that one, Todd. And if we get a look at the replay here, they're running it into the short side of the field, and they'd been running it into the long side with the tight end. And I think they fooled Cretin Derham Hall's defense on that particular play. And Barthez got outside and did a nice job, and Miesbauer knocked him out. Big first down for Central.
Barthez Bernard, 5'11", 180-pound junior, and he hasn't played much this year. He's had a shoulder difficulty, had a separated shoulder, and obviously it shows he can play.
Yeah, they're high on him, no question. He's and Central always has good skill guys,
Garafola.
Oh,
this was intercepted. Intercepted by Brandon Archer. Boy,
Yeah.
Garafola, sounds like a cliche, but he'd like that one back.
Yeah, and that was kind of like he pulled a pin on the grenade on that one. I think he had it probably would have been better if he just taken the sack, because if you look at the replay, there were 3 Cretin Derham Hall Raiders there and 1 Central guy, and I think they
you understand what Central's trying to do. They're trying to play it safe, throw some screens behind the line, but Cretin coaches know that as well, so they're smelling blood on that.
Oh, and exactly, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take Central out, and for all intents and purposes, they've pretty much done that. This is interesting. They just brought a guy off the bench and put him on. I didn't know you could do that.
Well, Pat Smith lines up as a slot to the left, and the give goes to Seren, and looked like he slipped a bit just as he got to the line of scrimmage.
Well, and I do believe, Todd, this is the first time that Cretin Derham Hall has had the ball in their own end the entire first half. They're on the 49.
Now, Scanlon and Calic starting to spread things out a bit and getting some different players in the game. Number 17, Matt Van Hoven checks in. 5'10", 150-pound senior wide receiver.
Along with Pat Smith here on the near side.
Phil Marino still in at quarterback. And the give goes to Kim Seren. Gets a couple up the middle. Adrian Perryman on the bottom of that pile. Coley, at what point, if you're Cretin Derham Hall, you worry? This is a slick field. This is a long road to the state tournament. At what point do you say maybe we ought to give these guys a rest?
Well, different coaches have different philosophies on that. Part of it is you want to give your kids the reps. I mean, they got to have the reps. And so, I personally would never take my first unit. I shouldn't say never. I mean, I'd have to be up a ton to take my first unit out in the first half. They got to get their reps. They got to play.
2:46 to go. Marino under pressure, but calmly throws it up the middle to Freeman, and Freeman has the first down, and he is tackled at the 30-yard line. Well, I think you saw there Phil Marino cool under pressure. He had 2 St. Paul Central linemen in his face, but showed no fear and just fired it to Freeman, who a big target wide open over the middle.
Well, you gotta give credit to Mal Scanlon. I mean, he's the quarterback guru, and he's the guy that has developed all of those quarterbacks, or at least had a significant, part in their development. And they know where they're going with the ball. Marino knew exactly where he was going to go with the football. He knew where his receiver was going to be, and he executed the play perfectly.
Maybe part of that efficiency we were talking about earlier. And Marino again going to put it up. Off to the left side to Freeman. Freeman breaks 2 tackles, still on his feet. Still on his feet. Boy, I'll tell you, he is just a bull. Tough to bring down. Number 55 finally brought him down, Paul Menard. But
I'll tell you what, Perryman
shed
put
a couple
stick
tackles,
on him too.
yeah.
That's, man, he's a big boy. See pass out here in the flat.
Watch. 1, 2.
Hanging on for his life, and then see Perryman stick on him.
Perryman reminds me a little bit of Tyrone Carter.
It's funny you say that. It'd be interesting to talk to him. He also wears 22.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a big guy, but plays a lot bigger than his size. Perryman, a 5'11", 175-pounder. Sarin in the backfield, 2nd and 7, 1:23 to go. Sarin off the right side. Sarin is dropped by Raheem Shabazz. Not before he picks up a couple of yards. Raheem Shabazz, another pretty big hitter for St. Paul Central.
Now, it'll be interesting to see how Cretin Derham Hall handles this. They're up a bunch, a minute left. At the same time, this is an opportunity for them to practice their 2-minute offense. I don't know that they'll do it, but I think they're going to probably move their guys up to the line, and they got to work on situations is where they're at right now.
Smith to the left, Sam Pear to the right. And the give goes up the middle to Archer. Archer breaks a couple of tackles to the 10, to the 5, and he is in for the touchdown. Brandon Archer just plows his way in from 22 yards out.
I tell you, Todd, that's a tough situation for Central to be in. Cretin Derham Hall seems to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want. Archer takes the ball up the middle there. There's multiple opportunities for Central to bring them down. They just didn't get it done.
Archer, again, a co-captain. He's a very gifted player. He can rush the quarterback, and you can see he can rush the football on that last play. Molnar, extra point is good. Just a lot of good athletes on this team, Coley.
Yeah, it's top to bottom. Athletes, coaching staff. And a lot of it is once a program is built, then and quite honestly, Rich Kallick, Mal Scanlon, Mike Scanlon, the guys that have been there for a very long time. They built a program. Back in I think it was 1985 when Steve Walsh was the quarterback. That was the first time that Cretin Derham Hall had gone to the state tournament since probably my dad played in ¡54. And so Cretin Derham Hall hasn't been great forever, but they have been great for about the last 20 years. And a lot of that credit goes to Mal Scanlon and Rich Kallick, and guys like Danny McQuillan. The number of volunteer coaches that they have. Charlie Reed's been there, 8-10 years. Doc Larson, been on the sidelines since I was playing. They're deep. They have depth in just about everything.
It's quality top to bottom. A couple of other assistants of note. Frank Jackson, who was an outstanding player for the University of Minnesota. He's coaching the defensive backs. Ray Hitchcock, another former Gopher, who played his high school ball at St. Paul Johnson. He's on that staff. Israel Moses, Andy Bischoff, the list goes on and on. And what can you say? It's a good program.
Holy man.
Bartez Bernard.
Did you see that collision? Holy cow. Young man from Central High School, Paul Menard, absolutely lit up a Cretin Derham Hall Raider on that return. I heard the pads crunch all the way up here.
Well, again, give credit where credit's due. Cretin not giving up. St. Paul Central, I should say, not giving up.
Well, and you can't. And, what Scotty's got to tell his kids at halftime, and I'll tell you what, from a coaching standpoint, being on the bottom end of this score, this is a tough halftime. It's tough to deal with this.
Just 34 seconds to go here in the first half. 2 wide receivers and a little movement on the line. Coley, we haven't seen Eric Simons, number 89, for St. Paul Central get the ball here in the first half. He also is a big target, 6'2", 240-pound senior. Number of Division I schools also looking at him, but he must be getting bottled up there in the middle.
Well, and I think that's credit to the Cretin Derham Hall defense. They're not letting him get off the ball. I mean, like I said, and you see him run off the field. He looks like he got a little bit of a limp, maybe a little bit of a groin injury or something there. But, you know, they're not going to let him get off the football. And the difference is they have guys who can physically keep him there, where, you know, many teams in the St. Paul City Conference may not have that physical guy that can keep him off the line of scrimmage.
33 seconds to go. And the give goes to James Paris Edwards. Plunges forward to the 22-yard line. Clock continues to tick. And
I think if I was Central, I'd call it a half right now. I don't know if they'll run another play or not.
well, of course, Central is coming off a dramatic win last week. Games you saw here on SPNN, or at least we hope you saw it. It was a marvelous football game. Came back with a 75-yard kickoff return by Adrian Perryman with just a couple minutes to go. But
well, Todd, we're at the end of the first half. The Cretin Derham Hall Raiders lead the Central Minutemen 48-6 in a half that was, what can you say, utterly, completely, 100% dominated by the number 2 team in the state, Cretin Derham Hall.
well, obviously the scoreboard indicates this is a one-sided affair, but I really think Central has played tough, if you can say that, with that lopsided score. I mean, you don't see the guys quitting. They're playing hard on every whistle, and they are just a little bit outgunned, but you don't see them giving up.
No,
and I just want to keep stressing that.
And what you hope happens now in the second half is Cretin Derham Hall starts to substitute. You hope that Central can pick a couple spots within the game, and that's, you know, what I did. And, you know, last year Cretin Derham Hall beat us 56-0. We talked at halftime, and it was like, you know, we want to execute this. This is what we want to get. It kind of turns into a practice where this is what we need to get better at, and this is how we're going to approach it. Because, you know, Central's got some big games coming up. They still got to play Johnson. Still got to play Como Park. You know, Como Park's 3-0 now. Dave Katz doing a tremendous job over there with the Cougars. And, you know, it's kind of like the city schools, they face off against each other.
Right. Well, the Cretin Derham Hall cheerleaders obviously enjoying this one, 48-6. And now they're used to seeing a lot of points on the scoreboard.
Yeah, it's something that Cretin Derham Hall's been doing for a number of years now. And, you know, kind of like back to what I was saying back in '85 when Walsh finally took them. I mean, St. Thomas Academy and Cretin always had that big rivalry, which unfortunately no longer exists. And, you know, Jerry Brown, a Hall of Fame coach at St. Thomas, had beaten Cretin, I don't know, 17, 20 times in a row. And I remember I was a freshman or a sophomore. I was at the game, and Steve Walsh hit Pat Scanlon for a touchdown to beat St. Thomas. And that was kind of, you know, I don't know, it depends who you ask, but to me that was kind of the turning point of the Cretin football program, that once they got the monkey off their back with STA, that then things started to fall together. And, you know, my senior year we beat St. Thomas, and you know, now they don't play, and actually now they probably shouldn't play. I mean, St. Thomas certainly doesn't have the enrollment that Cretin Derham Hall does, and while Slater does an awesome job over there, they were in the finals last year, but they lost everybody. They're a powerhouse, and I don't know what else to tell you.
You almost run out of adjectives to describe this very, very strong football program. We are at halftime. Our score, not a real surprise, St. Paul Central on the short end of a 48-6 score. And again, you're watching live coverage on SPNN.
Well, in action last night, I attended the Humboldt football game. They played, who did they play? I was just there
Highland Park.
Night. Highland Park, right. That spread offense, Dave Zychek. A good football game at halftime. Highland led 14-12. Humboldt played a very nice football game in the first half. And then it kind of ran out of gas. And, you know, Todd, it kind of goes back to the numbers game. Their numbers are light, and teams have a tendency to run out of gas when that they don't have the players that can, you know, hang in there for 4 quarters. I mean, you try playing 4 quarters of football, and you get pretty tired.
Well, if you like what you've seen so far, you can watch us again, as you see on your screen, coming up this Saturday at noon. And with the majority of football games on the collegiate level canceled, we may be the only game on Saturday.
Absolutely.
Then again on Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. You talked a moment ago about Humboldt. Jim Monkwitz really doing a good job. They haven't seen it in the win column yet, but their numbers are up at Humboldt, as you know, and they seem to be turning the corner there.
Well, and the key is getting buy-in from the kids. They got to buy into what the program has to offer. And it's a situation where Coach Monkwitz, he has the best numbers that Humboldt has had. I talked to their offensive coordinator, Steve Elizondo. He explained to me that as long as he's been there, and Steve and the former head coach, Jim Olson, who's a Fayette the coach, we used to be the head coach there.
Right.
Best numbers they'd ever seen. So.
And it takes a couple of years, and we may see them towards the top of the conference before long. Once again, we are at halftime at James Griffin Stadium in St. Paul. Our score, Cretin Derham Hall 48, St. Paul Central 6. You're watching SPNN.
I know, that's she wants to be yeah.
We are back live from Griffin Stadium in St. Paul. You're watching live coverage of St. Paul City Conference football. Our score at halftime, the Cretin Derham Hall Raiders 48, the St. Paul Central Minutemen 6. We can recap the scoring for you briefly. We should mention that this game is being presented to you by the great folks at Liberty State Bank in St. Paul. And
thank you, Harold Peterson.
Right in the heart of both St. Paul Central and Cretin Derham Hall territory. So appropriately as so, this game sponsored by Liberty State Bank, and we thank them for their support. And Central going to kick off. Barthez Bernard lines it up at the 40-yard line, and we're underway here in the second half. And the ball bounces back towards the end zone. It is going to be a touchback for the St. Paul Central Minutemen, and the Cretin Derham Hall Raiders will take over. And let's see if we see some of the second and third units here, Coley.
Well, it looks to me like the first unit's coming out there. You see some dirty uniforms. Pat Smith is going to start at wide out. Freeman looks like they're going to go with a new quarterback.
You see some big dirty uniforms, that is.
Actually, Matt Caldwell's in the game, a sophomore. Now that's unusual at Cretin Derham Hall.
Well, Caldwell gonna get some reps at quarterback, and he promptly hands the ball off. And a pretty good tackle in the backfield. Munoz on the stop. Biagini with maybe a yard. We can go with Biagini.
I thought that's where we were going.
That was a loss of 1 on that play, and it'll bring up a 2nd and 9. I was gonna try to recap for you when we have a break the scoring in the first half, which is basically a Cretin Derham Hall recap, other than a big pass play from Luke Garafola to number 22 Adrian Perryman, and again a run up the middle. Biagini, how was that? With a couple of yards up the middle. That'll bring up 3rd down.
Okay, we're going to take it down to the field to Danny Flanagan. Danny, take it away.
Hi, I'm Dan Flanagan here with SPNN Sports down on the sideline. And you look behind me right here, you can see the field is obviously very wet. You have to wonder if they're going to be switching some type of the shoe or whatever they're wearing. You obviously don't want to get any injuries at this point in the game. And also, even the score, though the score is 48-6, you have to give the Central team some credit. They still seem to be fired up, and hopefully they'll keep that going in the second half. This game will stay competitive. Back up to the booth. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Hope you're staying dry down on the field. 3rd and 6 from the 25-yard line, and a little delay, and Biagini's got a big hole and gets up to the 40-yard line. Raheem Shabazz finally brings him down, but not before a 1st down for Cretin Derham Hall.
Real important in the second half for Central to try to hold Cretin Derham Hall up, see if they can get something rolling here in the second half. I mean, it'd be interesting. I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall in the locker room at Central to see what Scotty had to say to his kids. Although I tell you what, at halftime I walked down into the stands, ran into many prominent sports figures, Sammy Casalenda and Tommy Cross from McAllister, and I heard when Central came back out on the field, boy, I tell you, their fans went crazy, and that was really nice to hear.
Well, no doubt they have good fan support. It's a 1st and 10 from the 39-yard line. Cadwell going for it all, and good coverage that time by Adrian Perryman. Pass intended that time for Pat Smith, but Perryman was with him stride for stride.
Well, there aren't too many people on the field with maybe less Kim Sarin that can run with Perryman.
That'll bring up a 2nd down, and again, Central playing hard really on every play, and that's what you need to do.
Well, and really what it comes down to, Todd, is that, and it's what football programs are about. If you as a football coach can get your kids to buy into your program, they're going to run through a wall for you no matter what it is.
2nd and 10 from the 39-yard line. Central showing blitz. Little delay to Biagini, and Biagini is tackled. The flag is down, and one of the Raiders a little slow in getting up in the backfield.
Looks like Brian Lancey's slow getting up, but he trots off to the sideline under his own power. Looks like we get a holding penalty against Cretin Derham Hall. I do believe that is their first penalty of the evening.
Might even be their first penalty of the year.
Well, you were talking about it earlier. You know, they're disciplined, and you know they're coached well, and they're coached not to do those things, and that's, you know, it's a credit to their program and what they've built.
Coley, when you were walking down, of course, you also saw a number of other coaches from the St. Paul City Conference. We're going to try to get Jim Munkwitz from Humboldt. We don't want to get Dan Failing on the field, or should we bring Jim up here?
I guess. I mean, we don't have a camera up here, though.
Okay, well, should we just hand Jim the microphone?
We can do that.
Okay.
We can bring him
after
in
this
with
play.
Us.
It's a second down, and little pass off to the left. Biagini catches it, he slips, but he moves forward, and good running that time by Biagini, and still not enough for the first down, but good yardage. Well, we're going to see if we can hook this up.
Can we work this? Will this mic work?
I think so.
Here?
Well, if we can get that in the booth, we have Jim Munkwitz up here in the booth, head football coach at Humboldt. Let's see if this mic is working.
Jim, are you with us there?
How you doing, Todd? Coley?
Okay. All right, I think we got it going. Well, Jim, 48-6 is our score. Your impression so far?
You know, I think that it's been a great half of football. You know, Cretin Derham Hall, outstanding football team. Central's got a nice club. You know, just haven't got the breaks. Maybe the field conditions are part of it. But two teams just giving it all they got. It's been a lot of fun to watch.
Well, good stop that time by St. Paul Central in a rare punting situation for Cretin Derham Hall. And Jim, before right at the end of halftime, we were talking about your club. You guys were in a ball game last night against Highland Park.
Oh, you know, we were talking about it all last night, all day today, and just the enthusiasm to carry over at school today. 14-15, we're down by one at half, and we're just talking about it. You know, it was like a chess match. It was fun to be in there where you're coaching, and things were happening, and the kids were pumped, and the crowd was into it, and coaches are coaching, and you know, the kids are making big plays, and it was just a blast.
And you got a young team, of course. You're going to have these guys building on that experience for next year as well.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the big things that we thought that carried over directly into today is our freshman team beat Highland 16-0 over on our field this afternoon. And Matt Smith, who's one of our freshman coaches, is with us. And, you know, another Humboldt grad, class of 91. And it was just a blast. The kids are all pumped up. And I think part of it carried over from last night and led into this afternoon.
Well, Jim, and you're in your second year after taking over for Jim Olson. You know, what differences do you see from last year to this year?
I think that we've had the kids maybe in not a totally different system because, you know, Jim Olson ran a class program and was a great guy to work with and a great guy for our kids at Humboldt. And when we miss him. But the thing is, I think the kids got used to and the consistency that we've had now in a couple of years where some of my ways are different from Coach Olson's, and we all have our
Number
little
44,
quirks about us.
unsportsmanlike
We're all
conduct.
creatures of habit, especially
The
coaches.
dead ball on
So I think
sportsmanlike.
just getting used to me,
15
the kind
yards,
of routine that I run,
15
and,
yards.
you know where,
Huh?
you know where I'm going to be real firm and where I'm going to have a little flexibility.
Now, I'm assuming, Coach Munkwitz, that you're here to take a look at who?
Well, we're looking at both clubs. We have Cretin next Friday night, and then the following Friday afternoon, we have Central right in our backyard for our homecoming game. So we're trying to get a look at both of them, and obviously there's a lot of things to take note of and to get written down or make mental notes. So, you know, there's two good clubs out here.
Well, okay, you got Cretin Derham Hall next week. You're coming off, obviously, a tough loss to Highland Park. How do you prepare your kids to play the number 2 team in the state?
I think you tell them that you have an opportunity to play what could be the best team in the state of Minnesota.
Well,
And it gives you a chance to kind of measure up there. You know, obviously, you know, we're not going to run through some brick wall and get crazy and talk about, you know, the upset of the year. But you know what? In part of the week, they'll hear about it.
Well, and I tell you what, they can go back to 1987, and unfortunately, I have to say that I was part of maybe what some people consider to be the biggest upset in St. Paul City Conference history when Humboldt beat the Cretin Raiders, and I was on that Cretin Raider team. We were at the time ranked 5th in the state, 4-0, and Humboldt, hey, they flat out took it to us. So, you know, it's any team, any night, Coach.
They're high school kids, and, you know, you're exactly right. That's why you tee it up and you play it. It doesn't matter how it looks on paper. A lot of times, you know, what looks good on paper is a totally different story once you tee it up and get out on the field.
Absolutely, and you know, Todd and I had talked about the fact that, you know, one of the big things when you're preparing to play Cretin Derham Hall is getting your kids believing that they can play. There's the big talk about the fact that when Cretin gets off the bus, they're up 14-0, and that it does happen. How are you going to get your kids ready to play the Raiders next week?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that we will talk about, and we've talked about in the past, is, you know, fear, nerves, anxiety, however you want to call it. That's all good if you control it. Don't let the fear control you so that you're not able to perform.
Well, I tell you what, why we've been having this conversation, you can see St. Paul Central not giving up, and a near completion that time by Luke Garafola to number 80, Chris Weewu, and Central continues to play tough.
Yeah, I tell you, you know, and that's ultimately, and I think Coach Munkwitz would agree with me when I say you got to get your kids to buy into your program. If they're able to do that, then, you know, they're playing for each other, and they're playing for Coach Howell, and they're playing for Central High School. And the fact that the score is 48-6, yeah, it's unfortunate. They don't like it, but you know what? They're coming out every snap, getting off the ball, trying to execute the best that they possibly can.
And I'll tell you what, the Central fans are having fun of this one as well. They haven't given up. Cortez Berry, who gives a pretty good kick, fielded at the 35-yard line, looking for a block down the right sidelines. He's got a hole through the middle, and he's going to go all the way. One man to beat to the 10, to the 5, and he is in for the touchdown. That's Phil Arnold, and he had an interception a couple of weeks ago, and there he takes a kickoff back, a punt return rather, for a touchdown. Boy, Cretin does it to you, offense, defense, and special teams.
You know, Todd, you're absolutely right. And back in '93 when I was the special teams coach here, and I had guys like Rosga and Benton who all went on to play, you know, Division I football. You have special athletes back there. You know, that certainly is one thing. And you look at, and here's the key. The key is you look how he takes it up the middle, and then he busts it out. Now look at the Raiders. 71's got a shot at him, and he missed him. But they set the wall up, and they come back, and they pick the guys off, and he's off to the races. I mean, that's just excellent execution in terms of special teams. And unfortunately, I think a lot of times, sometimes head coaches in high school programs maybe don't stress special teams quite enough. I mean, and they can definitely make or break a game. I remember last year against Como Park, you know, if we don't have those big returns, and Todd, you were there for the game, SPN covered it, we don't win that game without the special teams.
And a note, Phil Arnold, just a sophomore, as a snap was short, and a conversion is good. And I'll tell you, Cretin Derham Hall, even when they make a mistake, they make it look good. Conversion is caught by Marcus Freeman, and the holder, Miesbauer, look how he got a low snap from center, but made lemonade out of lemons, I guess.
That's right, and Todd, and that's actually, I mean, they practice that. You practice when you have a bad snap, you call fire, you watch it here, here's the bad snap. Obviously you can't hear it, but I know that the holder's screaming fire, because now you see Freeman release to the corner, and he just threw it up. It was, you know, very well executed.
They never play hard in their bad snap.
I think we're losing you there, Coach Munkwitz. I don't know if we have a problem with that mic now or what.
56-6 is our score. Cretin Derham Hall on top, in case you just joined us. We had a ball game early on. Cretin took an early lead. 26-yard touchdown run by Kim Sarin. They made it 14-0. Sarin again from 36 yards out. Then Central answered with their big play performer, all-around performer, Adrian Perryman, a 65-yard touchdown reception from Luke Garafola. The extra point, two-point conversion was not successful. It was 14-6. Looked like Central, at that point, we might have a ball game, but then a big return on the kickoff, 55 yards, and that brought Cretin in for another score a couple plays later. Weewu at the 20-yard line, and he's pulled down, and Central going to take over from there.
Well, now you're going to start to see Cretin Derham Hall make some substitutions defensively. I'm assuming most of their big guns will come and take a breather. And again, Todd, we go back to, this is where, these are the guys that are on the field now for Cretin Derham Hall. These are the guys that are going to be their starters next year. And this is where they're getting game time experience. And there is no substitute for that. You can't simulate a game in a practice situation. It's just not the same. You don't have the lights, you don't have the cameras, you don't have the fans.
You don't have
refs.
SPNN.
Right, you don't have SPNN. You don't have us.
Yeah.
You don't have Coach Monkowitz up in the booth with you.
This is kind of like Monday Night Football here.
Yeah, we got the special guests up in the booth.
There we go. Adrian Perryman slides his way forward for a couple of yards. Jim, we were talking also at halftime, the fact that your program at Humboldt has had some problems over the years with numbers, but you seem to have turned the corner, and all your teams, 9th grade on up, you're starting to get the numbers back, and that's really the first building blocks to a program, isn't it?
It's a numbers game. Last year,
We'll let you slip
we
a
had
headset on
43
here.
Total kids, and now we've seen over 80 this year. Now, and when things shake out, they're not all with us as far as time commitments and things. But just having the numbers in the freshman game today, we had about 30 kids dressed, 30 freshmen, and that's our future, and that's huge.
And the key for Coach Monkowitz is that now to keep those 30 kids out. And, a lot of times you'll have kids, they'll play, holy cow, did you see the arm on that official? He threw that flag, I bet he threw that 30 yards.
Matt Wyant just buried Adrian Perryman, and let's see what the call is. Also had a unnecessary roughness on the previous series. This flag is going against St. Paul Central. And you're right, Cole, he threw that one a mile.
Holy man. You gotta be careful. I wonder what he had it loaded with.
Central going the wrong way.
You can have second down and half the distance to the goal, which would be, You'll take third down?
Well, they're discussing their options right now with the captains.
That's been declined. Brings up third down.
And they'll just add third down.
Well, they had the loss on the play, so rather than second and 20-ish, it's going to be third and about 11.
4:18 to go here in the third quarter. Todd Johnson here along with Coley McDonough and Jim Monkowitz join us up in the booth from Humboldt High School. Dan Flanagan as well as part of the broadcast team. 3rd and 11. Garafola steps up in the pocket, and he was looking for Simons, but there's about 6 white jerseys around number 89.
Yeah, I tell you, it looked like Perryman might be able to come up with a tip on that one. Central forced a punt. Look at the replay here. Garafola gets back, takes a look, fires. I'm not so sure that wasn't intended for Perryman. But, you said earlier in the game, Simons hasn't seen the ball. And, a guy with that athletic ability, you got to get him the ball.
Coach Monkowitz, we're going to let you get back to your scouting of this game, and we wish you well this season. We're going to join you for your final game of the season against St. Paul Harding. So we look forward to that matchup here on SPNN later this year.
Well, thanks a lot, Todd. Coley, appreciate the time to visit with you. And thanks to SPNN. This is great for all the kids of St. Paul to have a chance to play on television.
We appreciate it. And I think you got a future up here in the booth, Jim. So
yeah, we might have to
take
bring
our
Coach
job.
Monk up here, I don't know.
He's going to take both of our jobs here, Coley.
Yeah.
Okay. And
thanks again.
Again, best of luck to you guys.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
3:57 to go here in the third quarter. You look at number 14, Pat Smith. And as you mentioned, Coley, Rich Kallick will try to get a number of players in this game. Rain has subsided, so all in all, weather-wise, not a bad night for football.
Yeah, it's interesting. You look at the field and you can start to see spots around the 50 and down around the 35. And because there are only 2 fields currently in the St. Paul City Conference that you can play football games on. When it rains, unfortunately, the teams beat the fields up, and it's hard for the maintenance crew at Central, who incidentally has done a wonderful job of getting this field ready. But they play soccer games on this field, they play football games on this field, and there's a lot of talk in the St. Paul City Conference as number 1 putting lights at Highland Park. Humboldt wants to do the same thing. It's the St. Paul City Conference has to take a look at where they're at with their fields, and I understand it's always always a money issue, Todd, but, you know, for our kids, you know, I think it's worth it for them, and particularly in football. I mean, there's, you know, more kids play football in St. Paul than any other sport, and it's an important part of the high school culture.
Right. Well, how do you feel about afternoon games? And what? Obviously, there's issues with parents who can't get off work to see their kids play, but historically, a lot of games were played during the day.
Well, you know, quite honestly, I don't like it. I mean, there's nothing like a Friday night.
There's a long pass completion, and coming down to about the 2-yard line, just bullying his way forward, number 85, Brian Miller.
Nice catch by Miller.
Mike Cadwell with a nice throw.
Yeah, the ball was a little bit behind him. He made a nice adjustment to make the catch, and then just refused to go down.
As you were saying on the day games.
Well, you know, to me, you know, I've always been a Friday night guy, and I actually, to be honest with you, I don't like Thursday night games. I mean, you know, in our schedule, we sometimes had to play Thursday night games, and then you get banged up, and you got to come back to school the next day, and you know, Friday night games are, you know, for me, that's where it's at.
Hugger goes in for the touchdown. Calvin Hugger, number 35. 5'10", 170-pound junior. So he gets a bit of glory here on television in the second half of today's game. And Coley, indicative of a lot of players on Cretin Derham Hall. Here you have Calvin Hugger, maybe the third or fourth running back. He had a 63-yard touchdown run last week. He's actually coming into this weekend's games, the Thursday and Friday games, he was second in the conference with 218 yards rushing. So a lot of depth as usual. And the extra point is good again by Tom Molnar. And the Cretin Derham Hall Raiders have reached the 63-point plateau, 63-6.
You know, Todd, this is where it kind of gets hard for Coach Calick and his staff. You know, the score, it's so unbalanced, and it looks so unfair. And people say, you know, oh boy, they're running up the score. You know, you put your 2s and you put your 3s in, and you can't tell them not to play hard. You can't tell Hugger not to try to score. And, you know, that's hard because, you know, as a coach, certainly you'd like not to put the points up on the board. But, you know what? These guys come on Friday night, and they want to play too.
Right. And, Coley, the goal of Cretin Derham Hall this year, there's no ambiguity. Their goal is to win the state championship, and they don't hide that fact. They tell their kids from the first day of practice, that's our goal. And you see some kids here are wearing a T-shirt with a slogan on the back that says unfinished business. And what that means, of course, is they didn't get as far as they wanted to last year being runner-up. They want to be state champions.
Well, and then they did it in '99, and you know, in '93, when I was on the coaching staff at Cretin, we lost Apple Valley in the semifinals. They've been in the state tournament, you know, each of the last 11 years. You know, you can't say enough about the program. It's just an exceptional football program. Oh, look
Barthez Bernard to midfield and knocked out of bounds. If you could find any chink in the armor here, it might be that Cretin's been a little bit vulnerable on the special teams on the kickoffs.
Well, on the kickoffs, yeah, Central's had a couple of nice kickoff returns, and I'm actually quite certain that that will be discussed in the film session. And again, you know, that's where you get better. You know, I know that, you know, as obviously coaching at Arlington, that's what we did after our games is we broke down film, and it's not a highlight session. It's not, you know, and I know that Coach Calick doesn't look at it that way. You know, sometimes kids would go, oh, well, we won 63-6. What can we learn? I tell you what, you sit in a film session with Coach Calick and Coach Scanlon and those guys, and I tell you what, you're going to learn something.
No doubt about that. Pitch back goes to Barthez Bernard. Bernard is just stood up at about the 45-yard line.
Central's got a new quarterback. Joe Borer is now in the game at quarterback for Central. I don't know if they just want to give him a little experience, which, quite honestly, isn't a bad idea.
Right.
They certainly don't want Garafola to get nicked up.
That's a long season for both teams, and as we've talked many, many times, you don't have a lot of depth. You really can't afford to have particularly your skill players go down. So, indeed, they are going to give this young man a chance to take a few snaps from center. Borer, just a sophomore. Big kid, 6'4", 190. And he's going to hand it off. Well, he's got some quick moves, does Barthez Bernard.
I'm kind of interested to see Bernard still in the game, with the fact that Scotty talked about the fact that he was a little nicked up, and he kind of nicked himself during the course of the week. Said he was going to pick his spots, but, you know, he's got to get him in game shape too. And quite honestly, now he's running against Cretin's twos, and so, you know, he's not getting hit by the likes of Freeman and Archer and, you know, so forth. Certainly not to take anything away from the second team guys from Cretin Derham Hall.
But again, a lot of underclassmen now, Coley, getting some experience. And Bernard, a junior, he slips a bit, but may have picked up a yard.
Big tackle by Jeff Flynn.
Number 61, 229-pound junior for the Cretin Derham Hall Raiders.
Kind of a side note on this Flynn guy. His dad used to be my boss, Dan Flynn. I work construction for Welsh Construction. So I don't know if he's watching this, but Jeff just made a tackle there, Dan. And a good hit it was, I might say.
Indeed. How'd you do in construction?
Not very well.
Not very well. Well,
actually, he called me Yabut. The reason he called me Yabut is every time he'd give me a direction of something to do.
There's an interception. Number 29, Phil Arnold. Arnold cross midfield, and a flag is thrown there late. You know, the clock had expired in the third quarter, and Boer may have just forced it just a bit. He looked left, looked off the receiver, and
tell you what, it was a nice ball, and it would have hit the receiver right in the hands. Cretin defender just made a nice play on the ball.
Phil Arnold, not long ago, had a 75-yard touchdown run.
Well, and again, he's a sophomore. And when you look down the Cretin Derham Hall roster, if you see a kid that's a sophomore, let me tell you something.
He can play.
He can play.
Yeah.
And you know, and they're loaded with juniors and seniors there.
At the end of the quarter, so we've got a first down on what? 41.
As you hear our officials setting the ball and the clock here as we start the fourth quarter here on SPNN. Todd Johnson along with Coley McDonough, Dan Flanagan. 63-6. Coley, sometimes you use the cliche, not you personally, we all use the cliche. It's, you know, a little closer than the score, and Cretin's had some big plays, but, you know, again, I just keep going back to Central has played them tough. I think Central has played Cretin tougher than either of the first two opponents, even though it doesn't necessarily show up on the scoreboard.
Yeah, well, you know, the tough part of it is the scoreboard can be a pretty intimidating thing. And, you know, the other schools that are going to face Cretin, I mean, you know, Humboldt's got them next week, and they're going, oh, man, and, you know, we got to play Cretin, and they just beat Central 63-6. They beat Arlington 63-0. But, you know, like Coach Monkwood said, you know, any team, any day. And,
right.
You know, I'm certainly not predicting an upset by the Hawks over the Raiders next week, but at the same time, that's why they play the game.
Matt Caldwell, again a sophomore at quarterback, and a flag.
And unfortunately now is where you may see mistakes by the Cretin Derham Hall offense. You got guys that don't get the same number of reps during the course of the week. You know, we were talking earlier about numbers. You know, Cretin Derham Hall has 75 guys on their varsity roster. They got 50 guys on their B squad roster and 68 on their 9th grade team. You know, Coach Monkowitz was up here talking about, excited about having 30 guys, and rightfully so. You know, if you can take 30 guys through, you know, 4 years and you can get 4 classes of that, you got 120 guys in your football program, and those are pretty good numbers, but you know, pale by comparison to Cretin Derham Hall.
When they have those numbers, Coley, 60 guys, are there guys cut as well?
No, not at all. And that's the nice thing about football is you don't have to cut guys. I mean, you know, I obviously having, whoa, big tackle there by Perryman. You know, having started the program at Arlington, and we started with like 40 guys, and, you know, in '99 we were up to over 60. you know, you're not at the luxury to cut guys. You look at the replay here, big hit by Perryman, takes the ball off the right side. Perryman comes, sheds a block, and catapults the running back into the air. There's Calvin Hugger.
Well, Perryman, for one, is really playing hard on every single play. Matt Caldwell, 2nd and 8. And gives the ball to Hugger, and Hugger is wrestled down. Mike Janich, number 52, in on the tackle for St. Paul Central.
Nice tackle by Janich. Came from his linebacker spot, came right down the line like he's supposed to. He scraped off a block and tackled Huggard for a short gain. Brings up 3rd and 5. See here again. See Huggard come down the line. It's a nice play.
Yep. Well, next week, St. Paul Central will take on your former club, Arlington. What a game we had last year between those two teams.
Oh, was that a game, Todd? Holy cow.
3rd and 5.
Here comes
And
the counter tray.
Little delay, and this is Hugger, and he's got nobody around the corner. Hugger is going to go in for the touchdown.
Let me tell you something. That is the Cretin Derham Hall offense, bread and butter. And there isn't anybody that can say different. I don't think Coach Kallick or Coach Scanlon can argue with that. Their counter tray, and they executed very well. And I tell you, you watch these second-team guys, you see the guard and the tackle pull out, you get a push and around the corner, and Hugger's gone. I tell you what, he's pretty good looking back.
Well, again, he's the 2nd leading rusher in the conference, and he may be number 3 or 4 on the chart.
Well, and I tell you what, bet there's several teams that would love to have him come over and start for them.
And we've reached the number of 70. 70-6 is our score. And if you could elaborate, Coley, on the power of the scoreboard, does it start hurting a little bit more when you see that many points up?
Well, when the number on the left, the tens digit, gets to 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and again, though, I can't stress enough, it's, you know, Coach Kallick and his staff, they're not running the score up. They're playing their 2s and 3s and 4s, but those kids have to play, and they have to play hard, and it's unfortunate. You know, Central certainly is down now. You know, it's frustrating to be on that side of the ball, and you look up at the scoreboard and you see that you're down 70-6. You know, they can't just kneel down on the ball, though. You know, it's football, and you come to play, and the kids that, you know, the Jeff Flynn's of the world, hey, they want to play, and they're going to go out and play hard, and you know, you certainly can't fault them for that.
Well, again, a lot of people looking at Central High School say they may be a year away from being a top contender. A lot of outstanding players who are juniors. Adrian Perryman, one of them. It's scary to think another year of development, what he'll be like next year.
Without question, and you know, it's something that you build to. I know that, you know, through the course of my career at Arlington High School, the guys that almost beat Cretin got pounded by him twice.
Right.
And that's, you know, Perryman slipped and fell on the kickoff.
Up front for St. Paul Central, talking about underclassmen. 68 Devin Jones, 6'5", 240-pound junior. Number 70 Noah Gagner, 6'1", 230 junior. Center Felipe Patterson, 5'10", 200-pound junior. Right guard Alan Sojourno, 5'10", 190-pound freshman. I mean, they have an all underclassmen line, and you got everybody coming back next year, along with Perryman, plus some other skilled players. You know, they're gonna have a lot coming back next year.
Well, and the other thing, Todd, is you'll find that what separates teams like Cretin Derham Hall, Eden Prairie, Blaine, is when the season gets over, those kids might take a month off. They might take a month to, you know, let their bodies heal up. And if they don't play another sport, and there are many, you know, multi-sport athletes at Cretin Derham Hall and at Central and so forth, but if you're not playing another sport, they start getting ready. They're in the weight room. They're getting their bodies ready. And, you know, that's sometimes what comes into question with, you know, the other St. Paul public schools, is that, you know, sometimes those kids don't put the same time in that, you know, I mean, like I said, I've been on both staffs. I've been in the Cretin Derham Hall weight room, and their kids are there and they're working, and that's what the other kids got to do. And you talk about the young kids that Central has, those kids have to mature and build themselves. They have to work at it to be good, and unfortunately it's hard to do. I mean, it's hard to say, when I'm done with school at 2:30, I'm going into the weight room, and then when I'm done, I'm going to the library to get my homework done, because sometimes, and I experienced it, we have kids who become academically ineligible, and now they can't play because they don't get their stuff done in the classroom. And for whatever reason, and I don't have an answer, Cretin Derham Hall doesn't necessarily deal with those same issues. It's preparation, both mentally, physically, across the board, and Central and Scotty and what he has to do with those kids, and he knows it, and he tells them. It's not like they don't preach it. They got to do the work in the off season so that they can have success during the season.
Well, we've shown you the records throughout the game, 71-2 in the conference, and here's a long pass to Perryman just off his fingertips.
Wow. I got to tell you, Todd, that surprises me. That was a mistake that I don't think Perryman he might never make that mistake again. That's you would say that's uncharacteristic of that young man. He always seems to come up with the big play for Central, and he had his man beat deep.
And of course, that happened right in front of our camera here at the 50-yard line, so he'll get a good view of that when he watches the replay of this. But he certainly isn't nothing to hold his head down about. He's been Mr. Everything for St. Paul Central. Is Cortez Berry going to get another chance to punt? He's going to get tired.
Yeah, he might have a sore hamstring tomorrow.
Berry, I think one of the better kickers in the conference.
See, now there's an example right there, Todd, of taking a fair catch. He didn't have to fair catch that ball. He could have returned it, but he didn't. He took the fair catch. Now you see the guys coming out on the field. Cretin Derham Hall is going to put another new quarterback in. You see the guys in the field. They all got white pants, and it's a muddy field.
Right.
But now these guys get their chance and their opportunity, and they're going to try to put it in the end zone.
Joe Barrett in at quarterback, number 7.
Number 30, Matt Miller, a 5'8" junior, running back, getting his chance to line up 7 yards deep. It kind of surprises me, Todd, that Central still has some of their. I mean, Perriman's still in the game, 8:20 left, down 70-6. You certainly would really hate to see him get hurt. I mean, I'd hate to see him get hurt. I'd love to watch him play.
Coley, let's talk for a moment about the quarterback legacy here at Cretin Derham Hall. Of course, Viking fans were pained to watch Chris Winkie pick them apart last week at the Metrodome. And you talked earlier about Steve Walsh, and the list goes on and on. How do they develop so many good quarterbacks here?
It's, I guess, my experience, it goes to coaching. I was at Cretin Derham Hall, or actually, I wasn't. I was at Cretin. And when Steve Walsh was a quarterback and Mal Scanlon was there, and Steve wasn't Steve wasn't a Winkie. Steve wasn't a Joe Mauer. Steve was just, he was the prototype quarterback, 7 steps, could read a defense. He was smart. They always, you put tags on people and what they can do. And Steve was always that smart quarterback who didn't have a heck of a lot of skills, but you know what? He was able to do the things that he needed to do and to be successful for Cretin. And it comes down to coaching and development. And working with guys and teaching them the right things and how to make reads and how to make pre-snap reads and how to get a good drop. That's a lot of times you watch quarterbacks and their footwork is off and that hurts their timing. They're not able to drop back and look down the field. That's the other thing. A lot of times they're not looking down the field, trying to make a decision as to where to throw the ball. And then when I was there, it was Danny Scanlon, who was Mal's son. And then it went to, Chris Walsh was a quarterback there, and, the list does go on. And I don't know that it's any one thing. When you're loaded with great athletes, you're going to find a guy that can play quarterback. The funny thing about Cretin Derham Hall is they have had in the past
quarterbacks that's what they are. They're a quarterback. They're not a great athlete like, for example, Brandon Johnson that, we had at Arlington, he wasn't a great quarterback. He was a great athlete.
Right.
He threw the ball all right, but you know what? He killed you with his feet too. I bet Joe Mauer didn't, he ran the ball maybe 3 times all year long. Matter of fact, I think Coach Kallick probably would have, kicked him in the tail if he was running the ball. And so, I think that's a little different. You don't see, although you did last year in the conference, you saw, Hunkins from Central was he was a quarterback, and White from Harding, a little more than a quarterback. He was a inside linebacker as well. But it's just it depends on the athletes that you have.
Good run on that last play by number 30, Matt Miller. Kept his legs churning. 5'8", 185-pound junior. And
you notice he's got 2 hands on the ball. That previous play, he kind of bobbled the ball, and he's saying, "Oh no, I'm not dropping that ball again."
Cole, you promised to bring some trivia this week. I'm going to throw one at you.
All right.
Cretin's only lost one game in the last one conference game, really, in the 90s. And that was in 1995. Just lost one game. Just think about that. They only lost one game in the decade of the 90s. And, of course, they haven't lost a conference game so far in the
new millennium.
The new millennium. Undefeated last year, undefeated this year. Who's the last team to beat them?
Well, I'm pretty sure that it was Johnson High School.
You are correct.
I think it was the likes of Thomas Tepe.
May have been before Tepe, maybe Tommy Reynolds. 1995, they shut out Cretin 17-0. Seems unthinkable now, doesn't it?
Oh my goodness, shut out?
17-0 was the score. That was year Johnson won the title in the St. Paul City Conference.
And see, that's kind of the thing that as the St. Paul Public Schools, you gear up. You're going to have a class every 4 years or so that's going to be able to compete with Cretin Derham Hall. We talked earlier about my 99 team, and now Arlington, they have a new head coach, Kevin Wolf. We lost a lot of seniors last year. And, they're rebuilding. Now, he's going to have to find a class. Maybe it's his freshman class. Maybe it's his sophomore class. Hopefully for Kevin's sake, it's his freshman class. And he takes those kids and he goes and he gets after them and he builds them. And all of a sudden, now you got a class that can compete with Cretin Derham Hall. And, unfortunately, they use the old saying, Cretin doesn't rebuild, they reload. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case for all the city schools. They got to rebuild sometimes. And, that's what Arlington is going through right now is a rebuilding process.
I said before the season, looking at the players that were lost to graduation, that nobody lost more to graduation than did Arlington. You had that squad together for 3-4 years, and the Brandon Johnsons and
Tony Oyewo
and that whole team. That's not to take anything away from the underclassmen who were coming up, but as you mentioned, it took them 3-4 years to get to where they were, and you're right. It's going to take a couple years to get a class like that together.
And it's fun to have those.
Here, Barrett's going to try to get this to the corner, and he's going to come up a little bit short.
Inside the 10, down to about the 8. And it's fun. In the last 2 years, we were able to go 14-7, so we won, twice as many games as we lost. And there you see Barrett going around the corner trying to get there.
He gets a pretty good shot here at the end, right there.
Yeah, he sure did. Central defender number 87,
Sean Hudson,
knocked him out of bounds. But, it'll come, and that's, kind of, if I had any advice for, not only for Kevin. I talk to Kevin all the time, and, there will always be a special place in my heart for the Arlington football program. But, all the young coaches, they had an article in the St. Paul Pioneer Press about the fact that, there was more turnover at the head coaching position this year than there had been in 25 years before. Scanlon and Smaller and, whoever, I forget the third guy had come in. You got Zychek at Highland, you got Kevin Wolf at Arlington, and you got Rebelke at Harding. And it's those guys have to understand that it takes some time, and they have to, they're young, they're new coaches, they're going to learn, they're going to get better, their staff is going to get better, and then their kids are going to get better.
3:33 to go in this one. Ball on the 9-yard line and a flag, and this may be called back. Matt Miller went in for the touchdown, but
He bowled his way in, too. That was a nice run by Miller.
They're going to call a procedure penalty on Cretin Derham Hall. You know, Coley, we were talking last week to Dave Zychek and got a chance to ask him, what's the biggest difference from being a assistant coach to head coach? He said, I'll tell you, it's a lot of time. Most people maybe don't realize all the things involved. He mentioned the fundraising, the alumni. Can you talk a little bit about the time commitment these head coaches have?
You know, all you'd have to do is go ask their wives.
You're right.
It really is a tremendous amount of work, and you know what the sad part of it is? It's not the X's and the O's. You know, I mean, I was fortunate to have Tim Williams as my offensive coordinator, who he, like me, you know, was kind of brought up in the Cretin system. Gary New as a defensive coordinator. Quite honestly, I didn't have to do a whole lot of X's and O's stuff. Those guys took care of it. What I had to do is I had to make sure that, you know, we had water bottles. I had to make sure that, you know, our uniforms were clean. I had to make sure that, you know, we had all of our equipment. We had, you know, mouthpieces. We had, you know, all of the little things, and you're ultimately responsible. You have to make sure that, you know, your younger groups are coached, you know, correctly, that the younger coaches are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And, you know, he's right. It is a ton of time. And in terms of, you know, what you get paid to do this job, and you know, there's a stipend, you know, the coaches get paid, and if you broke it down by hour, you're definitely under minimum wage.
Right.
Dead ball, encroachment. Third.
The other thing is, though, Todd, it's a blast. I mean, you ask Dave Zychek, I can't imagine that he for 1 second says that anything that he does isn't just a ton of fun.
By the way, his offense, #1 in the city conference in total offense. So that spread offense is doing quite well early on. Matt Miller
takes it down.
3rd and goal.
5.
Just over 2 minutes to go here in the 4th quarter. Mercifully, if you're a St. Paul Central fan, 70-6 is our score. And Central knocking on the door for one final exclamation mark on this one.
Cretin Derham Hall.
Did I say Central?
I think you did. I think that you'd like them to score.
I've said Cretin so many times. I don't know why I didn't say it there. Pitch back, and there's a flag on the play near the goal line as Cretin continues to shuffle in players.
Looks like a hold.
5 from the spot.
Deval Napoleon there on that
Number
play, number 43.
75.
Oh, the poor guy, he got his number called.
What? Okay, that's all right. Red captain, you can decline it.
I like those mics down there on the field.
Yeah, we got to talk to the guys in the truck. We might have to get that ump cam rolling.
There you go.
And
Just put on their hat.
Hey, do you think we can get the telestrator?
Offense,
I'd like to do a little John
the
Madden.
ball goes over, first down.
Well, Central holds.
That's good. I'm glad.
And they'll have a chance to get a couple more offensive plays.
$1:36 left. 70-6. Cretin Derham Hall. The #2 Raiders dismantling the Minutemen. And, you know, if you're Scotty Howe after the game, you know, all you can tell your kids, and I did it, you know, hey, it's over. We're done. We don't have to play Cretin again till next year. You know, you made reference, Todd, earlier to the fact that Cretin Derham Hall's goal extends beyond the St. Paul City Conference. And quite honestly, you know, my goal did too. I understand and appreciate the significance of winning a conference, but, you know, playoff time is when it really comes, and being able to put a trophy in your case. And we were fortunate; we were the runners-up in the sections last year. We lost to St. Thomas, who was the runner-up in the state, and we got to put a trophy in the case, and that's a big deal to the kids. And, you know, in particular at Arlington, that was the first trophy to go in the case for the football team, and that's a big deal, you know. And so while certainly these conference games mean something, and winning the conference is certainly important, the goal does extend beyond one game or, you know, 7 games, because when you get to the playoffs, anything can happen.
Number 36, Brian McIntosh on the run. He's just a sophomore, 5'7", 200-pounder. A couple of good runs from the line of scrimmage for the sophomore, and again, more game experience for these young players.
Well, as the game winds down here, we're under a minute Todd, I just want to thank you and SPNN. I've just had a blast doing this. This is for a guy who coached pretty much or played all of his life and then have to give it up. This definitely satisfies my appetite at least a little bit.
Well, I'm sure you appreciate it on nights like tonight, a cold, rainy, drizzly night, to be up here in the booth.
It's funny that you say that because, the kids, they're fine. They're out there running around, they're sweating. But as a coach, you're standing there freezing. It's it can be really cold, boy. I'll never forget when I was coaching at Cretin. We played North in the Minneapolis game, and the game is about to end here, and it was raining and cold, and holy cow, it can be miserable.
Well, that is the final play of the game in this one-sided affair. The Cretin Derham Hall Raiders keep rolling along as they defeat the Central Minutemen by a score of 70-6. So far in the year for the Raiders, 49-0. Opening game victory over Highland, 63-0. The next week against Arlington, 70-6. And next week the Raiders will take on the Humboldt Hawks. Central will take on the Arlington Phoenix next week. And that should be a good ball game as the teams meet at midfield, or across the field, I should say, and give each other a congratulatory handshake. And we're going to try to get the winning coach down on the field. And if we can, let's send it down to Dan Flanagan with the winning coach, Rich Kallick. Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Flanagan here of SPNN Sports, and I'm here with the victorious head coach tonight, Rich Kallick from Cretin Derham Hall. And congratulations on another great win, adding on to the season that's gone well so far. And how do you prepare week in and week out to keep getting these kind of results?
We play against ourselves. We grade the kids pretty tough manner after a ball game. We'll sit down individually with the kids and go over their individual grades. We try and focus on fundamentals, and we make sure we take the right step, the right angles to the ball and stuff like that. You have to play against yourself, and you can't overlook an opponent. You respect them, and you come out and play hard.
Playing with such a big lead, what do you say to your guys to keep them focused throughout the game? Because you continue to play very sharp the whole way through.
Again, you need to play against yourself, and we're playing a lot of kids, and those kids that get in have to prove themselves so they can move up the ladder and have an opportunity to play a little bit more. And, you can't tell the second team or the third team or the fourth team not to play hard, so we expect them to play as hard as we can.
And finally, obviously not a lot to complain about here tonight, but what would you like to see change over the course of next week to have another good game on for next week?
We were a little sloppy with our personnel changes with some of our special teams. The right personnel weren't there. We didn't have a corner on one play, and he ran a nice sweep against us. You can't have mental mistakes like that, and we need to be better focused to be able to do that.
Okay, well, once again, congratulations on the great win, and thank you for taking some time with us. Thank you. I'm Dan Flanagan here with SPNN Sports. Now back up to Todd and Colby in the booth.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. And, you're up 70-6, and that's a good question by Dan. What do you want to improve on? And, Rich Kallick talked about the special teams, which we commented on during the game. Central had some success on special teams, but with the victory, Cretin Derham Hall improves to 3-0. And at the top of the standings, Coley, there's a couple other undefeated teams. Como Park at 3-0, St. Paul Johnson at 2-0. They're in action tonight.
Yes, they are. And Como Park, I tell you what, they're thin, and I say that in terms of depth, and we talk about that being an issue with many of the St. Paul schools, but I tell you what, they're loaded in terms of talent. I mean, they got a guy, T.O. Vandewey, super wide receiver. Gabe Bates, only a junior running back. I think he had over 200 yards yesterday. They have some weapons. St. Paul Johnson, they kind of had a down year last year for whatever reason, and Coach Plasko's got them back on track. And I had a feeling that would happen. I mean, Johnson's the type of a club that's not going to stay down for long. And as you look at Central coming together, you know what? I'll tell you what, Todd. And I want to kind of change gears here a little bit. You look at Central right now, and they took a thumping, and that happens, but they're still together, and it's kind of about family. That's what we did at Arlington when we broke our huddles. We talked family because that's what it's about. It's not, nobody's going to remember in 20 years what the score of the Cretin game is. They're going to remember the good times and the good memories that they have, and that's the great part of football. I mean, I think that sometimes gets missed in all of the competitiveness and so forth, and ultimately, to me, that's the most important part.
Well, last week, this team met on the very same spot, did Central High School, and they were celebrating a thrilling come-from-behind victory, 28-26 over Highland. What does Scotty Howell tell them today when they're on maybe quite the opposite end of the score, 70-6 game?
Quite honestly, it's not all that difficult. I mean, basically, you just tell them, you know what, they're better than we are, and what are you going to do? The game is over now. I mean, I would say, quite honestly, he may have already started talking about Humboldt. I mean, what are you going to say? Now, certainly, I would imagine that they'll break down film and try to improve. Like Coach Kallick said, I mean, you play against yourself, and you try to improve yourself, and it doesn't matter who you're going up against. You have to, execute your assignments. Maybe you don't, you're not there all the time. You got players that you're playing against that might be better than you are, but, eliminating mental mistakes, doing things that are, conducive to your offense, to your defense, whatever it may be.
Well, if you like a lot of scoring, you can watch this game again on Saturday, 9/16. I guess if you're a Cretin Derham Hall fan, it might be more fun to watch this Saturday at noon, and again next Wednesday night, the 19th, at 7:30 p.m. And Coley, I've heard some of the other coaches say, well, after you play Cretin, you tell your kids, well, that's the school that has so many Division I players. Now we go back to the sort of the regular St. Paul City Conference schedule, and you kind of take it from there.
I tell you what, I did. I mean, we led off with them last year, and they absolutely waxed us. I mean, it was 56-0, and like you said, Central did play with them. I mean, it wasn't. Yes, I understand that what the score was, but they did play very hard. And
I heard the Arlington fans though said it was just bad coaching.
Is that what it was? Yeah, it could have been. Actually, they were calling for my resignation after that game, but so I somehow talked him. I think it was Bill Dunn that talked him out of it. But it's exactly what you do. Cretin's done. We're done with them. We don't have to play them again. Now we focus on, in my mind at that time, what I told my team is now we focus on teams that we can beat. And that's what Central has to do. They have to come out, and they got Arlington next week. You see them all talking over there, and that's bringing it together. That's what a football program is about. These guys are going to go through, all kinds of – think about how high they were last week, and quite honestly how low they are right now. That's the nature of the game. I mean, You're going to have the highs and you're going to have the lows.
And you may have a last-minute game next week as they take on Arlington. Back to Cretin Derham Hall. You need a calculator to add up their offensive productions. It's now, they've outscored in their first 3 games 182-6 over their opponents.
Yeah, well, there isn't a heck of a lot you can say about that. I can do basic math, and 182 divided by 3 is, that's a bunch, I think.
Yes. And if you're a Humboldt Hawk fan, well, this is the team that you're going to be facing next week. But, look, these kids play it one play at a time. If they go play hard on each and every play, that's all you can ask for.
Oh yeah, and you talked briefly about Arlington and Central has a little bit of a rivalry going. And over the last 2 years they split. Both games were good. Last year's game came down to, time had expired. It was a 2-point conversion with 3 zeros on the board, and Central made a nice play to knock it away. And unfortunately, at the time for me, it wasn't the outcome I was looking for, but it'll be a great game.
Let me run down very quickly the scoring for tonight's game. Cretin took an early 6-0 lead, 26-yard touchdown, Kim Sarin. They made it 14-0. Sarin again. Perryman, a 65-yard touchdown, made it 14-6. The extra point, the conversion was no good, and then it was all Cretin Derham Hall. Sarin, 55-yard kickoff return, another 6-yard touchdown. Schreier, 19-yard touchdown. Biagini, 30-yard touchdown. Defense recorded a fumble in the end zone. Archer, a 22-yard touchdown. Phil Arnold, 75-yard touchdown. Then Calvin Hugger finished the game with a couple of touchdown runs. The last, a 44-yard run. And that is your final. 70-6 is the final score. For Coley McDonough and Dan Flanagan on the field, and our entire crew down on the field and in the truck, we thank you for joining us. Once again, our final score from James Griffin Stadium in St. Paul, Cretin Durham Hall rolls 70-6 over St. Paul Central. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Actually, their scoreboard doesn't even go that high. Their scoreboard only has 2 digits.